It all begins in the Duchy of Camellia. A beautiful young noblewoman named Nanalia lost her mother early and had a difficult childhood. Despite her sorrows, she was not discouraged and lived happily with her younger half-sister. Until one day, a wicked stepmother named Imelda entered their home and hated Nanalia and her sister. She feared that the girls would prevent her son from inheriting the estate. Nanalia didn't know that her stepmother was planning to marry her off to a man 30 years older than her. Luckily, her kind sister told her at the first opportunity and told her to run away immediately. She decided to follow the advice and run away. But she got lost in the forest, and soon she was surrounded by a pack of wolves. But as luck would have it, a prince from a neighboring country passed by at that very moment and saved Nanalia. The moment they saw each other, time seemed to stop, and they could not take their eyes off each other. The prince took Nanalia to his castle, and they were quickly married. Nanalia now wore a shining tiara on her head, and she and the prince lived happily ever after. However, she forgot her younger sister, Lenarta. She only sent her a letter thanking her for saving her from her evil stepmother. Lenarta saved her sister from her stepmother, but she stayed in the ducal mansion, while Nanalia lived with the prince. Lenarta doesn't understand how she can be happy for her sister, who has had all her dreams come true, when Lenarta herself is still here with her evil stepmother. It turns out that the scowling second daughter of Duke Camellia Leonard, just a year ago, was a simple office worker in an ordinary world, without magic and princes. But one day, when she opened her eyes, she found herself in the body of her younger sister Nanalia, the protagonist of the fairy tale Lady Camellia. She figured that since she didn't become the main character, maybe by marrying her off, she could return to her homeworld. But not so. After Nanalia's wedding, she is still in the Duke's house, still Leonard. She decided then that it was worth continuing this life. Maybe she could create a happy ending, with a prince, like in a fairy tale. But she feared that it wouldn't end there, that she would have to have children and all that, and the fairy tale would still go on. There's no other way out for her anyway. 4 years later, while the ladies were gossiping over tea, a carriage came noisily to the square. John Sereggi, the vain heir to a wealthy family, stepped out. He indulgently chided the coachman for making such a racket and apologized to the ladies for his appearance. The ladies began to murmur even more animatedly, but he did not understand why they were reacting to his stunning appearance. Just then, a messenger ran up to him and held out a letter from Lady Jeremy, then ran off fearfully. John is not too surprised and anticipates the amusement of a letter from his fiancée, the daughter of the Marquis of Kellen. But to his surprise, the letter contained only a short sentence saying that he and Lady Jeremy must part. John looked around fearfully, then shouted that he had forgotten something at home, hurried away from the crowd, and hurried the coachman away. The ladies only looked at him scornfully. One of them told the other that a certain Mr. A was John Sereggi. The other replied that the letter seemed to be a proposal of separation. They continued to giggle at the hapless phone, and a third perplexedly asked how they knew all this. They also asked in amazement if she didn't read the Herald of Servants. In this newspaper once wrote about a certain gentleman that he is a real spoiled bastard. He harasses servants and cheats on his beloved with her best friend. And the next victim of this scoundrel was a certain noble Mrs. B. According to rumors, her parents knew nothing about Mr. A and wanted to marry their daughter to him. The newspaper is run by Lenarta, who is 18 years old. She is just writing the next issue when her maid, Apollonia, bursts in noisily to tell her that Sereggi and Kalon have broken up. The story from that book ended 4 years ago, and Lenarta is still forced to live in her squalid room, though she is still the heiress of Duke Camellia. The newspaper is run by Lenarta, who is 18 years old. She is just writing the next issue when her maid, Apollonia, bursts in noisily to tell her that Sereggi and Kalon have broken up. Apollonia eagerly replies that, thanks to the messenger, innocent Lady Jeremy has learned the truth about her fiancé, and adds that Lenarta only selects truthful gossip because she is incredibly intelligent. Lenarta listens quietly to the praise, but then a voice comes on and says it's all thanks to the eyes. To Lenarta's right sits a gorgeous snow-white peacock, who adds that Apollonia just doesn't know about him. It's the white eye. 1,000 eyes in all places at once that can keep an eye on everyone. It's an ability passed down through generations in the camellia family. But she can only have one wear at a time and is not stable until one reaches adulthood. It is because of her that Lenarta, the daughter of a mere servant girl, is recognized as Lady Camellia. The butler knocked on the door and said that the Duke wanted to speak to his daughter. Lenarta followed the butler down the corridor, trying to figure out what the old fool wanted this time, probably just to take it out on her again. He met her looking out the window. Lenarta didn't like it. She thinks her father hates her because with her birth, his white eye passed to her. And yet she is the daughter of a simple servant girl. She is already impatiently waiting to hear what he has to say to her, when suddenly he informs her that he intends to marry her to Edgar Balin, her stepmother's nephew, as soon as she turns 19. She is furious, and the Duke is surprised by her reaction. Leonard tells his father that there are bad rumors about Balin and that he regularly visits the gambling house. But father doesn't care too much about that. Then Lenarta adds that when Balin comes home after losing, he beats the maids. The Duke is not embarrassed by this either. He says that she shouldn't care what kind of man Balin is. She must bear the heir to the White Eye by Edgar Balin, and that is non-negotiable. Their ability must continue only in distinguished houses. It is now Lenarta's duty, as it is for all women in the Camellia lineage. Shocked, she leaves her father's study and asks Apollonia to leave her alone. And in her room she tears up her pillow with curses. She is furious because her father asks her to marry a scoundrel and give birth to a child by him. He told her that if Lenarta had a child with the White Eye ability, she would be able to continue to live happily ever after. But Lenarta thinks he takes her for a generic horse, nothing more. She cannot believe that she is being forced back into slavery. Lenarta ponders whether she has a choice or whether she has to submit to fate when a piece of paper falls on her face. Lenarta angrily stands up and brushes the sheet off, deciding that since she is in a fairy tale world, she will not blindly submit to fate. Apollonia comes running in at the angry cries. Leonard screams that he doesn't want to be an incubator, and then angrily whispers that he'll give the Duke a real hell. She sharply asks Apollonia to get information about Edgar Balin's gambling house. When the maid asks why, she tells her the news. Apollonia is horrified, because the gambling house has a thriving slave trade and illegal magic potions. Lenarta replies that there are a lot of things illegal in this place, and that suits her as an excuse. Apollonia asks how they will get into this creepy place, since they don't have that kind of money. Leonard replies that Balin is also not socially friendly and is not rich at all, but he is allowed into the gambling house even though he looks unattractive. Apollonia mentions the beating of the servants, to which Lenarta replies that the upper classes don't care about that. Pretending to think about it, she adds that it would be different if he had beaten someone from the nobility. She summarizes that in order to deal with the balance, you need power, or more precisely, the power of the law. After all, the royal family does not like the existence of such gambling houses. Lenarta will expose the scoundrel as a frequenter of these places, and his reputation will end. If they are lucky, they will be punished for all those involved in all the machinations in these places. She grabs the maid and declares that they need dirt on Balin to keep her from marrying him, and Apollonia must help her do it. Apollonia replies readily that she would do anything for it. She adds on the run that my lady is like a kinswoman to her, despite her lack of blood relations, and that she will get her dirt even at the cost of her life. Later, Lenarta tries to write another issue of the newsletter, but it lacks humor and intrigue. There are a pile of drafts scattered on the floor that no one would read. Opening the book, she sits there with all the pages crossed out and doesn't understand what's wrong. Maybe she has violated the 3 principles of writing. And the one from the window asks what she is sad about. On a branch sits a brown bird with pink eyes. Seeing it, Leonard exclaims its name, Sigir. The bird reminds him that his name is Sig Irlan. It is actually a magician living in the head, her childhood friend who often visits Leonard in the guise of various animals. Lenarta snidely asks if he thinks Sigir sounds better. There is a flash of blue under the bird's wings. Sig Irlan pulls out a book and says that if she yips, he will not give the book to Lenarta. The girl immediately starts bowing with contrived admiration, saying how incredible and magical Sig Irlan is. The wizard laughingly encourages her to continue praising him until Leonard asks her what he brought her there. It looks like a simple notebook, but it can record voices. Leonarda is thrilled to thank him that she now has a voice recorder. But Sig Ireland gets the feeling that something illegal is going on. He asks her to tell him why Leonard needed such a thing, and adds that he is in no hurry to go anywhere. After gently rubbing the bird on the cheek, Leonard agrees, and asks if he knows about Baron Barrel's gambling house. Sig Ireland asks if he is the Baron who deals in magic potions. Leonarda is surprised that he knows, to which Sig Ireland replies that these potions are from the Magic Tower. Everyone knows about it. The Baron, for example, buys up expired spell potions and sells them for many times their value. Leonard is surprised that the potions work, but Sig Ireland, shaking his head, replies that such potions are powerful in another way. They turn into an aphrodisiac. Leonarda wrinkles her nose squeamishly, and Sig Ireland says that Barrel's clientele is intentional, especially the elderly. Count J, for example. Leonarda is utterly astonished, and the mage continues that the Count has been rumored to be abusing the attention of the maids as of late. Leonarda giggles and sits down at her desk to write a bulletin. Sig Ireland can't reach her while she's writing new gossip. She writes about a casino that has become a kind of marketplace for magical potions due to the high demand for them. A tainted spell potion from the Mage's Tower has become an aphrodisiac, and the main buyer is an old aristocrat who has invested all his money in the purchase for almost 3.5 months. He wants to be attractive to his young maids, you see. After the release of this issue, the Earl's household began to guess who the issue was about. Count J began to be despised not only by the servants, but also by the aristocratic circle. The issue is also read by Lucas Leakeast, who asks his assistant who wrote the paper. He replies that it's just a business newspaper and not worth reading. Lucas replies that they know how it really was. He declares that he wants to meet the author of the newsletter in person. Lucas of Lycaeus had been unlucky all his life. He was the firstborn son of the Lycian empress, who died immediately after giving birth to him. Lucas lived his life growing up without a mother's love. When he was 4 years old, he was lost while hunting in the forest. The emperor had the whole area searched, but no one found a trace of the boy. His Majesty, like the rest of the nation, was in grief over the loss of his heir. The people and their emperor had already come to terms with their loss, until one day the 17-year-old Lucas was found by guards. It turned out that a commoner had found him and raised him for 13 years. Lucas grew up believing that he was an ordinary man, and now he suddenly realized that he stood at the top of the entire empire. However, he was no longer the heir to the throne. His father had a son named Norton by his second wife. Norton was happy to have an older brother, but Lucas didn't like the news. One day, Norton stopped him and laughingly asked why he had refused the invitation. Lucas replied grimly that the servants thought it would hurt Norton as the main heir. Norton responded by asking him not to shun his younger brother and to tell him more about life outside the palace, because Lucas understands ordinary people like no one else. Later, the two of them rode together in an open carriage through the town square. The crowd welcomed the crown prince, and one little girl with shining eyes presented Norton with a flower. It didn't surprise Lucas. He knew his younger brother would make an excellent emperor, but he'd made up his mind before he'd seen Norton's true face. Upon his return, Norton ordered the servant to get rid of his clothes, as they stank of the nobles. Lucas heard the insults to the commoners and realized that Norton had been lying all along. In fact, the prince took everything from the nobles who served him for the good of the empire and sent the worst and rotten provisions to the soldiers at the front. He ignored the military commoners and sent them to hot spots. Meanwhile, Norton informed the servant that Lucas would be coming to the palace later. Apparently, he had not had enough of the stench of refuse to which he was so accustomed. Norton admitted that he even questioned his kinship with the plebeian. Lucas, hearing all this, realized that Norton could not be trusted. He was used to people as simple as the woman who raised him. He decided to eliminate the crown prince and take the throne himself. And now, reading the servant's herald, he decides to strike Norton with information about the Baron, since Beryl is the crown prince's support. He just needs to find the author of the paper. Leonarda, meanwhile, is in a meeting with Balin. He tries to flirt with her and reminds her that she must be healthy and strong enough to bear him an heir. Leonarda, angrily tossing the sun umbrella aside, asks him if the lady has consented to the marriage. Balin replies snidely that it doesn't matter, because the Duke wants a grandson. Leonarda can't disobey him anyway. Suddenly, Leonarda swings wide and strikes Balin right in the face with her umbrella, disdainfully throwing at him that he never realized that she is the one who decides the fate of this marriage. After all, she can choose another husband, and he can't have another wife. Lying on the ground, Balin tries to say something as suddenly behind Leonarda's back, someone calls her name loudly. It is her stepmother, who already has her hand raised for a punch. Leonarda rubs her cheek while Imelda flaps at Balin, saying she has no right to talk to her future husband like that. She has already forgotten that the scoundrel is related to her stepmother. She seeks her room with the firm intention of preventing this marriage at all costs, but Apollonia is already waiting for her in her room. She sits on the bed and hides her face in her palms. Sobbing, she cannot pull herself together while Leonard tries to bring her to her senses. At last, Apollonia tells her that her younger brother Paul, who is responsible for printing the newspaper, has been kidnapped. She holds out to Leonard the note she found in the house with Paul. It says that someone wants to see the maid who is writing the bulletin urgently. Apollonia weeps. She has already asked everyone in the neighborhood, but no one knows anything, so they have no choice but to go to the authorities. Leonarda thinks with horror that she is the reason Paul has been kidnapped. When she sees the letter, she is also told to come alone. She ponders why someone would want to see her and whether it would really be safe to come alone. On the other hand, she doesn't want to involve anyone else. Apollonia asks what they should do now, and Leonarda, with a sigh, tells her to help her change her clothes. She has no choice but to go after Paul. Meanwhile, he is lying on the dungeon floor at the feet of two strangers. Trying to calm herself, she goes through her dresses. Nothing fits. She asks Apollonia to help, and then she stands in the doorway and assures her friend that she will be back soon. The maid is very worried because it is already dark. Leonarda tries to calm her down, but she thinks that she is the reason why Apollonia's brother was kidnapped. She smiles fearlessly and tells Apollonia not to worry, that she has a plan and that she is a clever girl. But when she goes outside, she begins to have doubts because there is no plan. When she reaches the warehouse and enters the unlocked door, Leonarda reminds herself that she is Lady Camellia after all, and hopes for luck. Two men are waiting for her inside, Lucas and his assistant. She asks one of them if he is the kidnapper. He vaguely replies that it depends on who she is. She demands that Paul be released, but Lucas wants to be sure of something first. He holds a sheet of newspaper up to Leonarda's face and asks if she wrote it. She replies defiantly that this is exactly why she came. Lucas is surprised that it was a girl who wrote it, and Leonard asks to get to the point. She says that she writes only the truth and that she follows the rules and does not harm anyone. Leonarda asks if the kidnapper thinks his act is too much, a cruel punishment for a couple of lines. Lucas laughs in response, much to Leonarda's amazement. He finds it funny to hear it from a girl who writes anonymously, and he doesn't care about anonymity. He is interested in Leonarda herself. With these words, he stands up and walks towards her. A frightened Leonarda realizes that she may have to reveal her identity. A man reaches out and says that he likes her articles and that he wants Leonarda to work for him. Lucas adds that he will pay her and supply her with the most reliable information, and this will allow Leonarda to expand her reach and sell the newspaper to more than just servants. Leonard asks what benefit he himself will have, to which Lucas replies, flashing his eyes, that it will be political. The girl, smirking, realizes that he wants to spread rumors himself. She hesitates for a moment. It certainly doesn't look like a commoner and she could use a sponsor, but she's not sure she can trust this stranger. Leonarda tells him so and adds that she needs more assurances. First, let them release her employee. Then, she will make a decision. She clenches her fists, trying not to give away her fear of the deal of a lifetime. Lucas, on the other hand, says wistfully that he's never seen a heroine save a prince. Leonarda threatens that she won't let it go, and Lucas, snapping his fingers, orders Paul's release. Paul rushes to Leonarda. He is touched that she has come to save him. She, however, is surprised to realize that the boy was just sleeping. He tries to justify himself. When the two men approached him, Paul was frightened by the questioning and fainted. but he was not harmed in any way. Lenarta replies that kidnapping is in itself a harmful act. Lucas impatiently asks if they can start negotiating. Lenarta readily replies that she agrees, but that her services will cost them dearly. With an answering smile, Lucas says that he has more money than she thinks. Lenarta declares with the same smile that, in that case, she will ask for even more. Lucas replies that she knows about all his wealth. Lenarta realizes that Lucas's smile is fake and then notices the long sword on his guard's belt. Only a few in the entire empire are allowed to carry swords of such length. That said, they think she's just a servant, so it's time for her to raise her price. Lenarta tears off her cloak, showing off the rich dress underneath, asking defiantly if they've changed their minds about her. She introduces herself as Lady Camellia and says that even members of the imperial family are obliged to treat her with respect. Lucas and his assistant are numb with amazement. Lenarta belatedly thinks it would have been better to just leave with Paul and not reveal herself. But just as she was contemplating the deal, the White Eye spoke to her. He tells her that this man is telling the truth and that he is the key to her future. White Eye couldn't lie, so Lenarta could only hope that Lucas knew of the importance of the ducal family. She need only avoid conflict. She and Apollonia had stolen the dress and jewelry for this outing from Imelda. Lucas stares at her thoughtfully, while his assistant whispers that the real Lady Camellia has married and gone to another country, so they're looking at an imposter. But Lucas had heard about the Duke's second daughter. He pointed his finger at Lenarta and demanded proof. Lenarta asked how she could prove her ancestry and threw something at Lucas. The aide immediately knocked the object back with his sword with a fierce shout and then brought it to Lucas. Lucas was holding the flower emblem of the Camellia family, so the girl was telling the truth. He still doesn't believe it. Lenarta could have just stolen it. She says snidely that deals are all about trusting your opponent, but Lucas doesn't even try. Lucas replies that he trusts her. It's just that her status has exceeded their expectations. Smiling sweetly, Leonard asks if he wants her to help them fight the decline of morals in the Empire. Lucas agrees and asks what she wants in return. Lenarta unabashedly asks for the most generous monetary reward from a member of the imperial family, and also a house to protect herself from the attacks of offended nobles, which she will write about in the newspaper as her activities begin to expand. Lucas agrees to everything, and then Lenarta, already less confidently, declares that she needs a protector until she comes of age. It doesn't have to be anyone. Lucas thinks that of course she wants to remain anonymous, but laughs out loud that such a talented journalist is officially still a child. She irritably puts on her cloak and turns to leave. Lenarta says they don't have to reveal their identities. She has nothing to lose in her position anyway. Lastly, she sets up her 3 conditions, refusing to work for the others and asking them to find her when they make up their minds. On the way home, Paul asks if my lady is sure of her terms. Lenarta admits that she is not, for few can stand up to their family. The boy asks why she nominated them then. Lenarta replies that White Eye called this man the key to her future. This means that even if the treaty doesn't happen, she will still meet Lucas. The next morning, Imelda is heard screaming from everywhere in Camellia Manor. She is angry at Lenarta for running away from home as a bride and stealing her stepmother's clothes and jewelry. She beats Lenarta again and now makes Apollonia bring the whip. Lenarta calmly says that she is her servant and does not have to obey Imelda. Then let the stepmother beat her with her bare hands. This scene is interrupted by a thin baby voice timidly wanting a sibling. It's Cullen, the youngest child in the family, Imelda's son. He asks what they are all doing here. Imelda immediately puts on an innocent look and cooed that she had just come to chat with his sister. Lenarta snapped that her stepmother liked to use her fists, and she hissed angrily in response. The boy smiles openly and says that he has come to congratulate his sister on her imminent marriage. The stepmother is pleased and says that she and Lenarta need to talk alone now. The boy asks to go with them. Meanwhile, Apollonia and Lenarta Tamio agree on something and hurriedly climb out the window of the room behind the stepmother's back, while she gently begs the baby to leave them alone. Cullen admits that he thought it looked like they were arguing. Imelda tries to change his mind, but the boy points out that Lenarta has just escaped through the window. Imelda rushes to the window and shouts that she is not finished with Lenarta. The girl slides down the rope, smiling radiantly, and shows her stepmother an obscene gesture. Imelda tries to convince her son that she is not shouting at Leonardo, but that they always talk like that. At the same time, Leonardo was happily walking away. And in the castle at this moment, Lucas tells an astonished assistant that he is going to propose marriage to Leonardo. He smiles in response to the statement that it would be a scandal. 10 minutes before this moment, Lucas asks his faithful assistant, named Kier Levitsky, what he has been able to find out about Lady Camellia. He replies that Princess Nenelia does indeed have a younger sister. Lucas already knows this, and Kier adds that Leonardo has not yet been introduced to the upper class, and so no one knows what she looks like. She is rumored to be the product of a secret extramarital affair. She was born to a servant girl in another country. Of course, the Duchess can't stand her. Lucas thinks about her third condition, that she needs a protector. It sounded like she was just really lonely. Kier asks him what Lucas is going to do, since that third condition is hard to fulfill. And then Lucas calmly replies that he is going to marry Leonard. He thought Lucas had gone mad, and even prepared to call for a physician, but Lucas laughingly explained to him that the Duke's youngest daughter, an illegitimate child who had been carefully hidden from everyone, must have the gift of the white eye. But Lucas laughingly explained to him that the Duke's youngest daughter, an illegitimate child who had been carefully hidden from everyone, must have the gift of the white eye. It is an ability that only one member of the family can have, and as soon as a new heir appears, the gift passes to him. Lucas explains the logical chain to Kier. The Duke suddenly stops being active, and then the handmaid's herald appears. Lucas thinks he's stumbled upon more treasure than he could have hoped for. He wants Kira to travel to see Lady Camellia sooner rather than later. Meanwhile, Leonardo herself sits in the tavern, banging her mug on the table in anger. The stepmother's accusations are unfair, and the swelling from the blow to her face has not yet gone away. Suddenly Lucas, in all his splendor, appears next to her and orders a drink for two from the bartender. Leonardo proudly refuses, to which Lucas replies that he has already ordered. She doesn't care. He laughs that now he will have to drink it all himself and offers her one more drink. Leonardo turns away and says that he might have put something in it. He is there and says that he is not such a scoundrel, and then takes a sip from his mug. A few drops rolled down his neck, and the sight made Leonardo catch her breath. Suddenly, she earnestly tells Lucas that he's handsome, and adds that he's too handsome for a kidnapper. Her line makes Lucas choke up. He is surprised that she recognized him. Leonardo condescendingly says she recognized him by his voice. She's not as empty-headed as her peers. He responds in the same tone, saying that he knew that the White Eye's gift was decided to anyone, and Leonardo turns slightly pale. Quickly pulling herself together, she asks Lucas why he came to her in the first place, since her conditions are pretty challenging. Lucas suddenly asks if she has a suitor. Leonardo replies that she doesn't, and then he turns around in his chair to face her, and tells her that he wants to propose to her. She decides, and Lucas continues, that he is the best protector for all the girls of the Empire, and offers her a sham marriage. After a little thought, Leonardo refuses with deliberate carelessness, because she can have a protector lower in status in society than her father. She then makes a counter-proposal. Abruptly standing up and grabbing the prince by his tie, she proposes that he spend the night with her. The astonished Lucas asks her what the reason for this offer is. Leonardo replies that if she gets pregnant, she can precipitate a nut of relatives at once, saying that the future heir to the family gift will give birth. Lucas can't answer anything intelligible, and Kier at the other end of the inn jumps up from his seat. Lucas asks her cautiously if she is sure of her choice, and he thinks to himself, looking into her sparkling eyes, that Leonardo seems to have had a lot to drink before he arrived. She snuggles closer to him and says she will even agree to write false articles for him in her newspaper, and that she doesn't even need money or a house, just a couple hours of his hard work. Lucas tries to pull away and thinks she's completely out of her mind from the booze while she hotly persuades him to agree. Kier finally meets her, rips Leonardo away, and screams that she has completely lost all shame and knows what she's trying to accomplish with her behavior. Leonardo sat down obediently under his pressure and asks gloomily what he would do in her place, for she would be given in marriage to an old pig if she did not act. Kier continues to rant, but Lucas decides it's time to end the show and pushes him towards the exit. Leonarda sips from her mug with relief, but Lucas tells her goodbye, that they will see each other soon. In the street, Kier breaks out of Lucas's arms and, rubbing his face in annoyance, says that this shameless girl isn't worth some goddamn yellow paper. Lucas does not listen to him, but laughingly says that it was brave. After all, highborn maidens usually stew and very floridly offer to stay with them for the night. But Leonard is not embarrassed at all. Kier asks that the tabloid about meeting an extraordinary girl not be added to the situation, and asks the prince if he wants such a shameless girl to be the future empress. Lucas stops laughing in a flash and seriously tells Kier that he's overreacting and shouldn't forget that there could be ears everywhere. Any passerby nearby could be a Norton spy. Kier apologizes, but he still doesn't like this whole brother thing, even for political reasons. Lucas asks him not to be a nerd, after all. He'd just bailed on Leonarda before the inn. Kier asks angrily if the prince has already fallen in love with her. Lucas hums and says that he seems to be very impressed with Leonarda's gaze. Then he cheerfully turns away and suggests that he go home so that he can go to bed early and start the new day early. Kier follows perplexed, still not understanding the prince's behavior. When Leonarda returned home, her stepmother was expecting another beating. She told the servants to lock the door to her room and to keep an eye on her from now on, so that the girl would not run away at night again. Leonarda pulls the handle to no avail, and with a second admits that she is under house arrest for a few days. But then Sig Ireland knocks on the window. She opens the window, takes the bird in the palm of her hand, and brings it into the room. Sig Ireland notices the redness of her cheek and shouts in surprise that she must have applied too much rouge to her left cheek. In response, she squeezes the bird painfully and says that it was her stepmother who beat her, and the wizard must have lost the rest of his brains and sense of humor. Sig Irish apologizes and asks why she is so oppressed at home. Leonarda snorts and replies that it's because she spends her nights out and she's about to get married. The bird tries to make a joke again and asks who the unfortunate man is. In response, she pounces on him again, and Sig Erlan apologizes again. Leonarda finally asks him why he has come. Sig Erlan has brought her a present, a small vial containing an invisibility elixir. It lasts exactly as long as 1 cup of tea. A joyful Leonarda asks if the elixir is really all hers. Sig Erlan replies that there is a catch. The potion will not work on clothes. Leonarda is furious and shouts that the elixir is of no use. She would have to walk around naked, and when the invisibility wears off, she would be naked in the middle of a crowd on the street. The wizard asks her not to throw away the potion, or their friendship will end, and leaves in a hurry. Leonarda shouts that he had nowhere to put the vial, so he gave it to her. Flying away and cursing, Sig Erlan sees the carriage at the gates of the ducal house. Inside, the butler hisses at the maid that they have an important guest and that no one but the butler should enter the hall. Lucas is sitting in the hall. The Duke is frantically trying to figure out what he wants here. He, his wife and son greet the guest politely, and Lucas apologizes for the unexpected visit. He greets Imelda and Cullen separately. They ask him what brings him to them. Lucas responds by asking them to explain why there are only 4 teacups on the table in front of them. The Duke is embarrassed, and Lucas declares that they are liars. There is someone with wavy hair, brown eyes, and a lovely, unforgettable face. The Duke doesn't know what he's talking about, and Lucas bluntly says it's about his daughter, Leonard Camellia. He notices that he can't even hear her voice and asks if she doesn't live with her father on the estate. He adds that she must be locked up somewhere. Imelda immediately jumped up, and Lucas added good-naturedly that she should be brought to him at once, since there was no prohibition against it. Imelda and the Duke are stoic. She realizes that Leonarda will not keep her mouth shut. Lucas is told that she is not allowed to go out and socialize with people. With feigned surprise, Lucas informs her that they had a very nice conversation with Leonarda the day before. Imelda is furious that Leonarda has dared to communicate with the prince himself. The prince gets down to business. He officially declares that he, Lucas Lycaeus, has a liking for their daughter Leonarda, and as a true gentleman, not just a prince, he has come to meet his beloved's father. The Duke slams his fist on the table with such force that the cup bounces and roars. Even bandits don't ask for a woman's hand in this way, and Lucas is being very rude. The Camellia family was recognized as ducal by the 12th emperor, and Lucas dared to come not as a prince, but as a man in love. If he were a commoner, he'd have been beheaded by now. The Duke is being rude and says he will forgive him for telling them they are liars and ordering them to bring their daughter here. With his hand over his eyes, he threateningly tells Lucas that he has never learned etiquette, having only recently returned to the imperial family. Keir grits his teeth at this disrespect, but Lucas calms him down with a wave of his hand. He admits that he was not trained in the rules of good manners, was too rude, and generally inconvenienced the ducal family from the morning. He decides to leave and says goodbye, indicating that he will fulfill the tradition another time. He is stopped by Imelda and told that, according to the rules, an unmarried noblewoman can only be seen with her mother's permission. She tries to explain the reasons for Lenarta's confinement in the house. Lucas interrupts her and suggests with a befuddled smile that Lenarta is destined for him by fate and doesn't step outside the door lest he meet someone else. He promises to write Imelda a formal letter next time and leaves. Later, Apollonia brings a dessert and tea to Lenarta's room. Some inhibitions are lifted, and now she can eat with the servants. Lenarta lazily lies on the bed and eats the dessert. Apollonia is careful to say that my lady has gotten prettier, and they say it means the lady is starting to put on weight. She loudly orders a corset to be brought, and Lenarta is indignant. She thinks she's in great shape. She says that she will live her life as she wishes and that no one can tell her what to do, but Apollonia pounces on her, shouting that noble girls should not be overweight. The butler enters the room and informs her that the Duke of Camellia wants to speak to Lenarta. In the study, her father stands with his back to her and is tensely silent. Then he says that he knows about his daughter's running away from home. Lenarta thinks it's about the time she stole Imelda's clothes and says that she wanted to go out a little before the wedding, but her father walks up to her and slaps her in the face. Lenarta sins, and her infuriated father asks where she met Prince Lucas. Lenarta tries to pretend not to understand him, but the Duke shouts that he knows everything. He shouts that His Majesty came to the manor today to see Lenarta. Then Lenarta sees a peacock behind his father's back, who says that it is true. The Duke, however, jumps up to her and grabs her by the shoulders, shouting that she dare not steal the white eye. It belongs only to the Camellia family. Abruptly pushing his daughter away, he threatens that she will not get away with her antics, no matter how Leonard attracts the prince. The Duke wants a butler and asks him to priboiser the date of Lenarta's wedding to Edgar Ballin, and at the same time to keep an eye on her and not let her out of the room. Lenarta is horrified, and her father, barely turning around, angrily tells her that there is no way she can call off this wedding. Even if she managed to get pregnant by the prince, the child would be Camellia. He shouts for her to go away, and the butler gently turns her around to the door while Lenarta tries to figure out what's going on. And rumors of Prince Lucas's visit and his intentions begin to spread among the servants. Apollonia laments that the gossip is unstoppable and tries to understand how Lenarta came across the prince. But she can't even tell how it happened, as she doesn't even know what the prince looks like. All she knows about him is that he is the eldest of the princes, blonde with blue eyes. They say he is kind, generous, and raised by a commoner, and that he is strong and charismatic. She remembers that the only place she's been is an inn, and the only people she's met are Paul's kidnappers. And then she is pierced by the realization that the bandit is the prince. Later, Apollonia tries unsuccessfully to get the guards at the door of Lenarta's room to let her in, but they reply that the Duke has ordered that no one be let in. Lenarta hears this and becomes more and more horrified. They won't even let her chambermaid in. They've taken away the ropes so she won't climb out the window like last time. And the guards are getting bigger and bigger. She is frantically trying to think of what to do next, when suddenly a pebble flies into the window. The two maids have brought a ladder to the windowsill and are calling her to come down. The kind girls lead Lenarta to a secret hole in the fence, which the guards and the Duke do not know about. Lenarta thanks them, but asks why they are helping her, as they will be punished for it. One of them jumps up to my lady and yells that they don't care. Her love story with the prince is far more important. They feel obligated to help Lenarta with her romantic story. Lenarta is shocked that the rumors have gotten this far. What she doesn't know is that the rumors among the servants were much more serious. Allegedly, Lucas, like a brave knight, wants to save his beloved beautiful lady from the oppression of her cruel parents. Through word of mouth, the story grew in detail and became almost a female love story. The maids rallied to help the young Lenarta and the brave Lucas as if they were the heroines of such a novel. One of the maids reaches for the lips of the resisting Lenarta with a lipstick brush. Smearing lipstick on her lips, they praise my lady's natural beauty as she waits patiently for an opportunity to slip away. Finally, Lenarta dives into the doorway, and the maids wish her luck and ask her not to forget about them when she becomes a princess. She leaves in a hurry. Arriving at the very same inn, she sees that the hall is completely empty. But then Lucas wants him from one of the tables and invites him to sit down. Kier is standing at the table. Lenarta sits down ceremoniously in a curtsy and greets His Majesty. Lucas laughs that she has forgotten all etiquette that time. Lenarta apologizes and promises not to forget the rules of propriety in front of the Emperor's lady from now on. The prince does not know how to react and then asks her not to try so hard. He is uncomfortable. Lenarta is pretentiously embarrassed, but quickly sits down and loudly asks the innkeeper to bring her a beer. Lucas laughs at her for dropping the formalities so quickly. She playfully and flamboyantly apologizes to the great prince. He just as playfully asks her to stop. In the same tone, she replies that she cannot disobey his orders. The prince looks at her fondly and thinks that she is a very witty girl. Lenarta has not changed her attitude towards him, even after learning of his title. He notices the redness on her cheek and asks her anxiously what has happened to her. Lenarta replies evasively that she has had difficulties. Lucas asks what they were, and Lenarta replies that after a certain prince visited her at her house, her father became furious. Demonstratively slamming her palm against her palm, she rolls her eyes indifferently, saying, "That's all that happened, and it's all because of Lucas." The pale prince apologizes for rushing his visit. She quickly replies that she's used to that attitude by now. Suddenly, the prince bends over the table and gives her his cheek. He tells a stunned Lenarta that an apology is not enough. Let her hit him if it will comfort her a little. Lenarta is surprised that he allows himself to be hit after she was beaten because of him. She asks for her hands and turns away, refusing to hit Lucas. He says that hitting people is hard and offers to do it himself, but Lenarta yells that he shouldn't. Kier grabs Lucas by the arm and yells that he won't let him hurt himself. Lucas calmly says he won't, and promises not to allow any more such lapses on his part. He bows respectfully to Lenarta. She nods irritably and thinks the prince is pressuring her, though his face is worth it. With a businesslike cough, she suggests getting down to business, now that they've learned all about each other. She offers to outline the benefits for each side, so that everyone wins. Lenarta wants to start with Lucas, and asks if it is true that he is at odds with his younger brother. The crown prince has a large estate and is engaged to the daughter of the Marquis of Lamicia. Norton has a firm grip on power, but on Lucas's side, only Cyrus Lamicius, the Marquis's youngest son, is not the heir. Kier smirked to himself, and Lenarta continued that his father had chosen Norton, which was why he had given his daughter for him. If Kier had chosen him too, it would have been easier for him to succeed in his career with his longsword. Nevertheless, Cyrus has taken out Lucas, who represents the common people, and has become a traitor to his family. With a smile, Leonard tells the prince that his only support in the person of Cyrus is highly questionable. Lucas is impressed. In the 3 times they've met, he's learned so much about him. It seems to him as if there is some sort of chess game going on between them. It's possible that Lenarta is no ordinary journalist. The rumors she gathered for her newspaper, thanks to her resourcefulness, were her main strength. Leonard reveals his own plan for the messenger. First, he was going to start provocative rumors about Norton with the paper, and then to make it a platform for a political game. Lucas laughingly admits that this is so. Lenarta immediately cuts him off, saying it's silly. She explains that it's not those who are loved by the people who become emperor. The people's only power is rumor. Lucas would like to enlist the support of the nobility, such as Cyrus, but all the aristocracy is on the side of Norton and imperialism. With a bored look, Lenarta says that Lucas was going to consolidate his power with the help of progressive ideas, the carriers of which would be the common people. That was his last hope. She looks at him carefully, and notes that he is indeed handsome, but he does not have the gloss of young aristocrats. He's well built and has an even tan, thanks to the outdoor labor of being a commoner. But that's it. That's all Lucas is. She tells him that he is strong because he has lived among the people and knows how people view the nobility, which hasn't changed in centuries. His ability to look at everything through the eyes of a commoner is unique, but therein lies his weakness. This makes his whole plan hopeless, because without the support of the nobility, he will never see the throne. He assumes that Leonarda thinks he doesn't need the newspaper. The girl stands up and says that since he's Prince Lucas, he needs to raise the bar and go separate press. Saying this, she claps him on the shoulder. Keir was about to grab his sword, but Lucas gestured with his hand to stop him. Leonarda suggests that he buy an entire publishing house in someone else's name, such as Cyrus, so that his newspapers and magazines would be read not only by servants, but also by the nobility. Leonarda says that Lucas isn't thinking with his own head, but Norton must already have hundreds of plots against Lucas. She elegantly throws back her cloak and urges the prince to rejoice, for with him is the luck of the flesh, Leonarda Camellia. With a sly smile, she says his visit to her house helped her escape. And they don't need a tabloid. They don't even need political articles. That would only inflame animosity between people. With sudden bravado, she shouts that people in the paper want gossip, not politics. Fashion news, columns about expensive jewelry and the most eligible suitors, that sells best, you need fun. And Leonarda should be the editor-in-chief. Lucas laughs. He thought she wanted to raise the level of the newspaper, not buy an entire publishing house to feed the nobility with nonsense. Leonarda leans over him and says that people will pay money for this, and he can insert his propaganda between the lines. She suddenly grabs the prince by the chin and says that gossip and provocation is their strategy. Out of 1,000 people spreading gossip, there will be one that will be useful to Lucas. Lucas takes her hand away and says she's come up with an excellent plan. But what will she get herself? Perhaps only money and fame. He suggests that Leonarda just wants to escape from the ducal house. Lucas asks what Leonarda's real plan is. Taking a step back, she reminds the prince that she offered him to share her bed. Leonarda wants to strike these blows at the duke. After all, she herself is a mere servant's daughter, and the duke is ashamed of her as anyone else. Plus, she has cut short the duke's opportunity to pass the gift on to his legitimate son. Now, he wants to marry her off so that White Eye can pass to another. He has told his daughter that she can get a divorce if she gives birth to an heir to the gift and oversees his estate. Lucas and Keir are shocked that the Duke sees their child as only an opportunity to continue the lineage. She bluntly tells him that she knows that she and Keir have already started inquiries about her and why they came to see the Duke then. Lucas thinks admiringly that he can't hide anything from this girl. Surely she already knows his motives about the White Eye. He replies that he came to see the Duke on purpose, but the Duke refused him because he supports Norton. Shaking his head, Lucas says he wanted her to know he was coming, but he didn't think the Duke would use physical violence on his daughter for this prank. Leonarda slaps the table and says that the Duke has more problems with the sudden appearance of the prince in his house. He will regret not having a lavish wedding for Leonarda and the prince. Leonarda sarcastically folded her palms into a heart and said that rumors of their great love had already spread among the guards and maids. Allegedly, the prince, raised by a commoner, had come to rescue the beautiful lady whom the evil father was hiding in the house. Leonarda tells the astonished Keir and Lucas that this particular story will be the very first in their new newspaper. Keir is outraged. The prince cannot tarnish his good name with such vulgar gossip. But Lucas does not listen to the assistant. He thinks the idea is great, very romantic. Leonarda interrupts their argument and asks directly if Lucas wants to achieve the throne. Keir is in a panic. He asks Lucas to refrain from answering, because if anyone finds out, he will be accused of treason against the crown. And Leonarda, according to Keir, is going to write about it in his newspaper. But the girl reminds him of the sham marriage and tells him that she agrees to it. She promises to make Lucas emperor. Keir can barely contain his laughter in response, but Lucas just smiles and says that he didn't expect her to agree. Their love story will go around the whole empire, and then even Duke Camellia will not be able to resist them. Leonarda says she wants to leave her father's influence. She does not wish to be merely a means of passing on the gift. She cries out that it is her ability and her body. It is up to her to decide what to do with it. Even louder, she adds that her fiancé is a dozen years older than she is, and ugly too. She grabs the prince by the shoulders and says that since she has to marry, let it be a handsome and young man, and asks him eagerly to be her husband. The prince is taken aback, and she adds that you could marry a face like that. Lucas laughs, and she tells him not to be deceived. It's just the facts. Leonarda thoughtfully suggests that they divorce once Lucas becomes emperor, since the marriage will not be for love. Keir jumps again, and Lucas shakes his head with a sigh. It's not so easy for an emperor to get a divorce. Leonarda replies that then the prince can marry a lady who won't make him emperor and let him live with the title of duke. Quickly approaching, Leonarda tells Lucas that there is an easy way to divorce her. Have him demote her title back to duchess after the wedding, while he himself remains emperor. Keir is finally in shock. Lucas says that only the male line becomes emperor, but Leonarda says eagerly that he can rewrite the laws. She has the white eye and the crest of camellia. She is the truest duchess. She teases Lucas, and he sighs at her blunt directness. Suddenly, he realizes that he's happy around her, although she has no envy or subservience to his title. Crossing his arms, he tells Leonarda that he would have refused under different circumstances, but he is sure that Leonarda will indeed go all the way. They shook hands laughingly, sealing the deal, and Keir thought the laughter sounded a bit villainous. Gossip about Prince Lucas and his beloved Duchess of Camellia had already spread through the capital. It was whispered that he had come to the Duke early in the morning to ask for Leonarda's hand in marriage, and had even quarreled with the Duke and his wife. The first issue of the leaky Morning Gazette went into circulation, still free. The front page contained details of the affair between the prince and the Duchess. The article described Lady Camellia as a ravishing beauty, something Sig Erlan is now loudly resenting. Leonarda calmly says that this is just a lead-in to the rumors. Sig Erlan was still screaming, and Leonarda grabbed him and told him that she had described herself as plausibly as possible. And then he saw the pile of letters on her desk. She replies that these letters were sent by a nasty drunkard, namely Edgar Balin. In the letters, he used extremely foul language against her. Sig Ireland thought that this bum could do something bad. He cautiously tells Leonarda to be careful and asks on whose behalf the articles in the newspaper were written. The material is very provocative in terms of politics. Not everyone would dare to put their name under it. With a smile, Leonarda replies that she took the name from her friend Betty, the same one who broke off her engagement to John Seregi. At first, she had asked Keir to take his surname, but he didn't want his family involved. Besides, he's the prince's bodyguard now, and that could hurt Lucas's reputation. That's why Leonard asked Betty. She is the daughter of a baron, not related to the prince in any way, and therefore no one to influence her in praising Lucas. Plus, she's a woman. So if there are any questions, Lucas will simply ask that articles written by a woman not be taken seriously. Sig Erlan is amazed that Leonarda is willing to use prejudice to her advantage, and she grabs his wings again. Finally, she lets the bird go and says she has an article to write. When asked how she got so many ideas, she replies that this is just the beginning. She is about to take over the imperial family and has slightly frightened Sig Ireland with it. Norto, meanwhile, reads a beauty recipe from his fiancée Alexandra Lamisha in the Lycian Gazette, and is amazed that someone mentioned her name in this tabloid. He asks his assistant Count Lavanov what this writing is all about. He replies that the newspaper is becoming popular with the nobility. He says that Alexandra is the first beauty among the nobility. Her outfits and jewelry are constantly discussed. Therefore, it is not surprising that her name appeared in the pages. But that's not what Norton wanted to ask him. He knows that his bride is the most beautiful, which is why his mother chose Alexandra for the title of future empress. Norton wants to know who is brave enough to dare to mention the imperial family in articles. The Count replies that it is Betty Yates. The Crown Prince knows it's the Baron's last name. The Baron has the nickname Potter because he once saved His Majesty's life by catching a falling flower pot. And the paper's author is his daughter Betty. The Count tries to reassure Norton, believing that Alexandra will only be considered a victim of gossip. The Emperor finds the paper an amusing read. But Norton throws the paper on the table in anger, saying that he will not even read it. As he leaves, he asks the emperor to tell him that he will come to tea with him. Later, Lucas, Norton, and the Lycian emperor gather for tea. He laughingly asks his sons if they have ever seen this new newspaper. Norton asks His Majesty how he even knows about the newspaper, and he responds by asking him to just call him father when they're not in public. Norton thinks he's changed since Lucas showed up. That day, the imp cried with happiness at having a son again. He decides to keep his resentment to himself and says that he is glad that his father is interested in this reading. He replies that it is natural because it is about Lucas. Lucas asks not to listen to him, and his father asks him to tell him how it really was. Norton recalls hearing rumors about the relationship between his brother and the Duchess. Her family has long enjoyed the favor of the imperial family. Norton suspects that his brother is up to something. Lucas notices this suspicion in the crown prince's eyes. Deciding it's worth making a little spectacle of himself, he fails awkwardly and embarrassed to say that it was generally as described. Then adds with a smile that he really loves Lenarta. The emperor was very enthusiastic and immediately demanded to be told all the details of the alliance. Norton pretended that he too was very interested to hear. He says that the Camellia have long been close to the imperial family and have helped them identify rebels with the white eye on more than one occasion. In his mind, Norton is terrified to see if his brother has really fallen in love with the heiress of this family. They are almost equal in power to the emperor. Perhaps Lucas is only trying to use that to his advantage. Lucas says dreamily that he fell in love with Lenarta before he knew who she was. The girl literally dazzled him with her beauty. Norton must understand him. He has a fiancée too. Norton smiles, and their father excitedly asks to tell more about his future daughter-in-law. Norton wonders if his brother might not be lying. After all, she is also a bastard, which means she has no rights in the family. But Norton is still nervous. He grins wickedly mentally, the nobles drawn to the nobles, but aloud only heartily congratulates his brother on such a marvelous bride. The emperor continues to pry for information, but Lucas says that he would like to protect the girl's honor, as their relationship is not yet legal. The father decides that his son is either being modest or is trying to get his blessing. He laughs that his naive eldest son has become a daredevil and is interested to see the lady who won him over. He then puts this conversation aside and jokingly adds that Lady Lamisha should stop drinking vinegar and pearls. As it was said in the newspaper, it is unhealthy. The emperor then bids farewell and gets up, saying that he still has an important letter to send. Later, Lucas arrives in the emperor's study. Father knew he was coming. Lucas begins to bow in an officious manner, but his father asks him to stop the formality. Putting the paper on the table, he asks his son if it is his handiwork. Lucas pretends not to understand, but his father asks him to take a closer look. There is something written in small print, among other nonsense. The article says that Lenarta Camellia gained fame through her affair with the prince. She was already engaged to a man much older than her, a nobleman and a regular at a casino run by a drunken aristocrat. And that's why Lady Camellia claimed an affair with the prince. The emperor says that at first he took it as an attempt to smear Lenarta, but then he remembered that there is only one casino of this kind, and that is the Barrel Gambling House. This place also deals in potions. This man is Norton's main financial backbone. It seems that the purpose of the article was to slander Lady Camellia, but on close reading, it is clear that the purpose of the article was not her, but Barrel's machinations. Lucas realized that the emperor would have noticed it, but he has to keep the appearance of a simple guy in love. He says he feels sorry for Lenarta. He couldn't leave her in distress, though there are exaggerations in the article. His father looks at him suspiciously and thinks Lucas wants to strike at Baron Barrel to destroy Norton's financial source. He would have torn the place down anyway, but is surprised that his son has learned to weave intrigue. He realized it had to happen, but it's hard for him to watch his two sons compete. That one is only one. It can't be divided between the two princes. The emperor has no choice but to let them prove their power on their own. The emperor asks Lucas how to help him. The emperor asks Lucas how he can help him, and with his head bowed humbly, he replies that he only hopes for his father's goodwill. In other words, he asks for their blessing. The emperor is amazed at his cunning and says that the nobleman to whom she is engaged cannot be arrested or sent away without proof. Lucas smiles radiantly and, saying he understands, asks permission to leave. He left, and the emperor remembered seeing him for the first time 13 years later. He could not believe it was his son, but the duke, with the help of the white eye, found out that it was true. There's no point in doubting that, especially now. Although Lucas sometimes seems grim and overbearing, he's still really his firstborn. And in the duke's library, Leonard is discovered at night by Apollonia. She has brought my lady some food and asks what she reads at night. They are all books about politics, and Apollonia doesn't understand why her mistress would read such things. She looks up at Lenarta, who is chewing, and sees a mountain of books behind her. Lenarta replies that she has indeed read all this, to find a law on censorship of mass media. There is no such law, and it has been ruining the life of the Emporium for 4 centuries. This is good. It means Lenarta won't have to answer for her articles. Apollonia said with a sigh that Imelda had made a fuss about the gossip in the paper today and ordered the maids to find the traitor urgently. The duke wasn't thrilled either. Apollonia takes a seat next to my lady and says that she was interrogated into the night. Lenarta apologizes for that. She thinks that the newspaper has at least brought excitement to the whole city, all the way to the ducal house. It's all because of that very article about the prince and Leonard. It wouldn't be outrageous if the prince hadn't come to ask for her hand in person. Lenarta asks if Paul has been interrogated. Apollonia replies cheerfully that no one knows what her brother is doing on her mistress's orders. Lenarta sighs with relief. She says that Balin has something to do with Norton too, and is now terrified. He will probably try to keep his head down until the wedding if Lenarta is tried to be brought there by force. Lenarta realizes that she needs to be careful. Her father will never give permission to marry Lucas, because that would mean great difficulties with the family gift. After all, if she and the prince had a child, it would be protected by the imperial family. And a child with the white eye will never be allowed by the duke. That's why they want to marry her off to Balin, who will gladly give the child to the duke. Lenarta collapsed exhaustedly on the floor, saying she wanted to marry Lucas as soon as possible, and Apollonia admitted that something was bothering her. She doesn't trust Prince Lucas. She says that if he were sane, he would have put Lenarta in a dungeon long ago for insulting his highness. She says outright that the prince has gone mad. Lenarta laughs, but agrees with her. But that's exactly why she trusts Lucas. After all, power usually changes people. For example, her father looks down on everyone, but Prince Lucas listens to Lenarta. She adds sadly that no one listens to women in this empire. Even the crown prince's mother has to be careful what she says, lest she be condemned by society, and Lenarta's opinion is never listened to. But with the prince, they have it differently. They are really equal conversations. She admits to being rude to Lucas, but she's very interested in talking to him. Her life has been aimless, with no way out of this fairy tale. She tried to get rich, but it was pointless. Then she started writing for fun, and now, because of her articles, the imperial family is on its ear, and rumors of Leonard are repeated throughout the city. She is frightened, but also full of hope that at last there is a ray of meaning and happiness in this gray life. She says with a smile that that is why she trusts the prince, and Apollonia realizes that it has been a long time since she has seen her mistress smile. She rests her head on her shoulder and asks my lady not to overdo it, and to remember that she is always on Lenarta's side. The next day, Lenarta, the prince and Kyr's son, meet to discuss work. She asked what the emperor had said. Lucas tells her that his majesty needs proof. Lenarta is not surprised, and they simultaneously conclude that the proof must be obtained in person. Kyra is amazed, and Lenarta replies that she will do the emperor's bidding. She will infiltrate Baron Barrel's gambling house. Kyr cries out that he won't let the lady go to such lengths, but she reminds him that she has the white eye. It will help her avoid danger. Lenarta will denounce Baron Barrel, because they need to deprive Norton of his financial support. And then, with physical evidence of illegal trade, they will go to the emperor. But Lucas replies that the empire has no law on the potion trade yet. The emperor will just attack the wizard's tower. Lenarta is pleasantly surprised by Lucas's knowledge of the law, and suggests that, in that case, Tracking down the victims of the slave trade in this establishment is much more essential. Keir immediately says he will go too. Lucas and Leonardo flatly refuse him. Lucas says that Cyrus has no sense of humor, and Leonardo explains that with such a pouty face, Cyrus will be found out on the doorstep. Keir shouts that His Highness must not appear in a place like this, or else rumors will spread. He points to the prince's beautiful face and says that there is no mistaking him for anyone else. Leonardo thinks that Lucas should wear a mask. But then she gets a better idea. A handsome brown-haired man enters the casino with Leonardo as his companion. They look at each other in love and chirp something about expensive jewelry. It's Prince Lucas, slightly altered with magic. The disguise worked. The gatekeepers didn't notice anything. Whispering, they pass and sit down at a table. Leonardo had expected more luxury from this casino. The Baron is still nowhere to be seen. She swivels her head around, looking for Beryl and any hints of illegal activity around her. Leonardo notices a closed passageway to a room with a guard standing guard, but from her seat, she can't see where the passageway leads. Suddenly, Lucas pulls her to him and stares intently into her eyes and says quietly that she's looking around for something, not at her lover. Behind his back, she sees two ladies whispering. Leonardo realizes that she is attracting too much attention with her curiosity. Playing along, she leans back on Lucas with a sigh, who says he'll finish playing now and they'll have some privacy. But Leonardo points to the card table and says she wants to play too. The men at the table say that she is unlikely to win, saying that it is a very difficult game. Leonardo begs. The men laugh and tell Lucas to let the lady play. The prince tries to talk them out of it, as they have already started a new game and new players are not accepted. But the men continue to persuade, and Leonard tugs on his sleeve, and Lucas laughingly agrees. She exclaims happily and thinks to herself that it is very hard for her to play the empty-headed young lady, but she has to. The croupier explains the rules of blackjack. Starting with 2 cards, each turn players get an extra card, but can discard it at any time. Leonardo needs between 17 and 21 points to win. If the gallery is larger, it will lose the entire bet. The dealer has just dealt the cards and Leonardo raises her hand and shouts, "Stop!" Everyone looks at her in surprise. She shows her cards and naively asks if she can stop if she has 18 points. Lucas pulls her to him and tells her that only he can do that, because it is a very difficult game. Leonard pretends to apologize and asks again to play once. The other players laughingly agree to start over. The cards are dealt again. One of the men thinks they will beat this silly girl at once. But 3 whole times in a row, Leonardo wins with 20, 21, and again 20 points. Leonardo cheers loudly. Their winnings have grown exponentially. One of the men angrily exclaims that Leonardo is cheating. She puffs up her cheeks naively, saying that she doesn't know how to cheat. Lucas lifts her up and laughs that his Rosa has actually picked up cards for the first time. The men at the table are angry. They have lost all their chips. Leonardo offers them another game with a sly smile. She wins again with ease and the men pounce on her with accusations of cheating. Then she was indignant. They themselves said that the outcome of the game depends on luck, tricks will not help, and she herself, the so-called Rose, even put on the line a necklace, which gave her lover. In fact, the game depends more on the psychological attitude. Leonardo watched her opponents' faces during the game and realized when they were bluffing. That's all it took for her to win multiple times. One of the cursing players raised his fist to strike, but Lucas nimbly grabbed his arm. He hissed, asking how dare this man treat his lady like that. A young man, the casino manager, approached them and conciliatingly suggested that they take a break from the game. Leonardo was indignant about the money, but the man assured her that her winnings would be handed to her personally. Lucas lifts her up and offers her a drink, then asks the manager to prepare a guest room. They realize that since they can't see any other rooms on this floor, they must be beyond that passageway, upstairs. And that's where what they're looking for might be. With a bow, the manager leads them down a long hallway on the 2nd floor. They stop at another staircase with guards, but the steward points them to the door of their room. They bow, the manager leaves, and the couple can finally relax. They talk about each other's acting skills, teasing each other. Lucas sits down tiredly on the sofa, but Leonardo tells him to get up immediately. She sits on the edge of the huge bed and says they should lie down on it together. Plopping Lucas on the bed, Leonarda quietly explains that a couple sitting demurely on a couch when there's a giant bed nearby looks suspicious. She laid him on his back and sat on top of him. The girl assures him that it's all just a conspiracy, but Lucas thinks it's a different story. Looking at him meticulously, she says she feels relieved. The magical change in appearance made Lucas less attractive to her. The barely blushing prince asks if she enjoys looking at his face. Leonarda says nonchalantly that she is entitled to the utmost comfort for her efforts. Lucas is slightly offended that she called his face a convenience. Leonarda replies that beauty is the way to get what you want without spending too much. Suddenly pulling her to him, Lucas says that he is ready to give her even better working conditions. Just then, the manager knocks on the room and immediately enters. The couple is outraged, but the man points to the guard with the box. The manager brings their winnings, 30 Bellin gold pieces. Lennart turns on the joy track, and the manager asks what they are going to do with the chips. Lennart asks about the options. She is told that they can either be exchanged for gold or played at the casino next time. She asks what happens if you keep all the winnings here. The one replies that it accrues 1% each, but it's not just the money that increases. With a mysterious look, the manager says that they can get something like a unique experience in exchange. Leonarda happily reveals that she's heard about it, and then tells Lucas that you can get something interesting here, and she wants to try it. Lucas is pretending to be interested. That's why they haven't seen a hint of potions anywhere. They are only offered to the most important customers. The manager adds that the rooms for important people are on the 3rd floor, if they agree to those terms. Leonarda and Lucas look at each other and realize that this is exactly what they need. The manager invites them to the 3rd floor. At the stairs, he warns them with a sly grin that everything they have seen and heard must remain secret. It is casino policy. Lennart exhales from the closeness of victory and starts to roar again, pretending to be a silly young lady, while Lucas plays along. The manager pulls back the ribbon and wishes them a pleasant evening. On the 3rd floor, Lucas and Leonarda are lazily sprawled out on the couch. He is holding cards, and she is pretending to have had too much to drink. Suddenly she jumps up, and covering her mouth with her hand, runs away, screaming that she has to go to the restroom. She walks out of the hall and looks around. It turns out that she and Lucas had prearranged an allegedly urgent visit to the restroom. Now Leonarda has to go around the rooms on the floor while the prince distracts the guards. At first, Lucas doesn't want to let her go alone, but Leonarda assures her that drunk girls are found in casinos all the time. But the prince is not allowed to reveal himself. She had thoughtfully taken Sig Ireland's dictaphone with her. Now she needs to find the evidence. Normally, that would be stored in the dungeons, but this building has 4 floors and no basement. So what she needs is on the 3rd or 4th floor. She notices that the guards are nowhere to be seen. Apparently only the most important guests are on this floor. The girl pulls the handle of the first door. The room reveals a game table, a couple of men and a lady. At the second door, she ran into a fight between 2 men. And by the 3rd door, the door went straight into the security room. She mumbled that she needed the restroom and hurriedly closed the door behind her. Leonarda was worried that people would look for her if she hung around for too long. Then she noticed a strange iron door that she had not noticed before. She hadn't seen the stairs to the next floor, so she thought it must be just beyond that door. She hesitates in front of the door, thinking she should call Lucas, when suddenly a guard calls out to her. He asks her menacingly who she is and why she's standing there. A second guard approaches them and says it's just a lady on the paddle, looking for the restroom. Leonarda gives a jittery nod of agreement. The first guard asks the second guard if this girl came with a guest, or if she is from here, in which case she is not allowed to go down to the 3rd floor. Leonard is pierced by his last words as he suddenly turns around and says to take her back to the 4th floor. Threateningly, he adds that if anyone is looking for her, he will just bring the girl back. She starts to try to explain that her companion is in that room over there, but then she realizes that it's even better. She needed to get to the 4th floor. Leonarda pretends to be completely drunk. The guards believe her and carry her like a doll to the next floor. Suddenly, the guards walk away from the door in the opposite direction to Leonarda. They leave her in some empty, windowless den and tell her to stay here first. They order her to sit still, and slamming the door shut, add that she won't be able to get out anyway. With a grunt, Leonard indignantly stands up and looks around. The room looks like some kind of warehouse. Suddenly, she hears some sobbing to the side. Lenarta sees a girl with short red hair crying and is struck by a hunch. The stranger quietly asks for help as she suddenly falls to the ground. In the room, Lucas is playing cards with feigned nonchalance, but he is worried about Lenarta's long absence. She is trying to bring the stranger to her senses. Lucas is getting gloomy. He has decided that Lenarta has no intention of returning, and he ponders when he will be able to leave this place. Asking what time it is, he realizes that Lydek, the first morning star, has already risen. He begins to worry about Lenarta and is already thinking of ways to escape. Suddenly, one of the players, looking terribly tired, shouts to the footman that he has given him sand. Lucas is alarmed. The footman gives orders and a cart with bottles and a casket is wheeled to them. The man scoops a substance from the box and after tasting it, is satisfied. Lucas realizes that this is something unusual. It must be a magic potion. He asks his neighbor what it is, and the whole table laughs, because it's Lucas's first time here. The footman kindly explains to him that the so-called sand is a powder of healing herbs that soothes the nerves. Lucas realizes it's ping, a plant that induces muscle relaxation. It's used for a sleeping potion. It's not magic, it's just an herb. The footman offers him a taste of sand, but Lucas gets up and leaves on the pretext of an early rise. A guard with Lenarta behind him bursts into the room and asks who the lady's companion is. Lucas runs up to her and sees that Leonard is almost unconscious. The guard asks him to go out into the corridor to talk. There he asks if he is sure he came with this girl. Lucas manages to affirmatively and asks what happened. Lucas clenches his teeth in fury, voicing his suspicions about the guard's dirty deeds. He points indignantly at his head. Lenarta has decided to ride him like a horse and has picked out all his hair. Lucas smiles indulgently, and the girl pretends to be almost asleep. The pair walk away from the downed guard. In the carriage, Lucas tells Lenarta, who is nestled on his shoulder, that she can get up now. With a laugh, she leans back, and Lucas interrogates her as to why Lenarta has been gone so long. She replies with a sigh that she saw something, but she can't say what yet. They don't have much time. She tells him to come to the Duke's estate this morning with an official letter. Lenarta is sure that because of the rumors generated by their newspaper, the Duke will not be able to refuse him this time. She insists that Lucas must come. He agrees with a sigh, hoping that Lenarta has a plan. Later that morning, Lenarta's father reads a letter from Lucas, in which he has written that he is following the Duke's advice. He warns that he will arrive at the house at lunchtime today and will not take no for an answer. The Duke is very angry at the prince's insolence in asking for dinner that morning. He tells him to tell his wife to prepare Leonard for the visit. So the maids are all around the bedraggled Lenarta, dressing her for dinner. Apollonia is amazed that Lenarta is well again, but she mentally curses Lucas for not letting her sleep. Imelda angrily asks if the prince knows the rules of good manners. Lenarta replies that if he did, he would not have asked her to marry him. The stepmother continues to shout angrily at Lenarta, claiming that she is the reason for all the fuss. She tells the maid to dress her as decently as possible, since everyone is spreading rumors about their family. Lenarta refuses to wear a corset, but Apollonia wants to hide her fat waist. Lenarta replies that the prince has already seen everything, which puts her stepmother in a stupor. The girl blithely tells her that their relationship is already at that level. She doesn't believe it, since they had to change clothes together in the carriage. She says the corset will kill her, and Imelda angrily agrees that such a shameless woman had better die, or there is no way to get rid of the bad blood. Lenarta challenges her to tell her about the blood, because Imelda's husband is behaving very promiscuously. In response, her stepmother grabs her and shouts at her to shut her mouth. She shouts that Lenarta can't get married without permission from her stepmother anyway. She suggests that the girl hopes not to marry Balin because of rumors, and then says with a sly smile that it is not only Lenarta who can use rumors. If there is talk that she does not keep herself within the bounds of propriety, the prince will not be able to take her as his wife. Men all act at first as if they'd die for a lady, but when they get bored, they leave the girl as if nothing had happened. Pushing Lenarta away from her, The stepmother thinks she has finally looked out. In the end, the girl will always be nothing more than property of the Camellia family. But then Lenarta rushes to her and presses her against the wall. She says that she will not sobbingly ask for forgiveness. Lenarte threatens to do something irreparable if Imelda makes her angry. She says that once a tower dog grabs its prey, it will never let it go. And Lenarta is a tower dog. She orders her stepmother to dress her and go away from her chambers. So, at lunch with Lenarta, Lucas asks her why she looks so pale. She sarcastically asks him why he thinks she slept so little last night. She also had a fight with her stepmother this morning. She laments that Lucas is the reason she had a monster morning, but he doesn't seem displeased. He retorts by remarking that she looks edgier and younger than her age today. Lenarta replies that that's the dress she wore as a child. Turning around, she showed him the ties in the back. Without them, the dress wouldn't fit. Lucas laughingly asks why the Duke's daughter doesn't have proper clothes. Lenarta collapsed onto the table with a groan. The prince says that their next official meeting is outside her house, because he will have to buy the lady of his heart some decent clothes and jewelry. Grinning, Lenarta replies that such a thing is not voiced, but simply bringing gifts. As she sips her tea, she adds that there should be more presents, and Lucas agrees with a smile. Lenarta suggests that they end the small talk and have some privacy. They move into the garden under the shelter of a column. As she took the notebook out of her corsage, the prince hurriedly turned around in horror. She replied that it was the only way to sneak something with her discreetly. Lenarta tells him that it's not just a notebook, but a magical recorder that contains evidence against the casino, although it can't be used as evidence. The world is not allowed to know about this item, plus the notebook belongs to the magic tower. Lucas is surprised that Leonard has connections in the tower. In the dungeon, Leonard managed to bring the girl to her senses. She told him that she had been running an errand for her lord, but that she had been seized by the guards of the gambling house. She wanted to get out of the cell, but everything was a blur. She could not even get up. She jumped up and shouted to Lenarta that she could not stay here. The guards threatened to sell her and the others as slaves abroad. The girl just as suddenly sobbed, saying that her little sister wouldn't be able to survive. Lenarta smelled the odor of herbs. Apparently, the girl had drunk some kind of potion. Lennart realized that Baron Beryl was forcibly sedating people with potions, and that in addition to the casino, people were being trafficked here. She asked the slumped stranger to answer who had kidnapped and drugged her, and what her name was. But the potion started working again, and she barely managed to say her name, Logan, and weakly asked to be released. Lenarta slams the notebook shut, and Lucas realizes why this can't be used as evidence. Lenarta was in danger too. He asks how she managed to get out of there. It turns out that Lenarta had broken a window there, and generally anything she could. The guards came running to the noise. Luckily, one of them remembered her and her winnings. Logan couldn't save her. Lucas agreed for her that if that girl was telling the truth, there were people on the 4th floor who wanted to be sold. Barona is sure to be busy once the truth comes out. He was determined to go there again, if only to save those unfortunate people. Lenarta agreed with him just as strongly. Lucas is lying on the casino floor, having been changed again by magic, wailing with all his might that he has lost 5,000 gold pieces. Lenarta crouches over him and gently comforts him that he will still have a chance to win it back. They coo softly, continuing to attract attention, and then call for the manager. Lenarta asks him to take them to a room so that her lover can forget himself and to bring another girl. The manager is perplexed, and Lenarta tells her lover that she has seen a girl here who is sure to please him. Allegedly having trouble remembering Organa's name, she asks him to bring a girl with that name. The manager remembers to himself that there was such a girl among those recently caught, and decides to bring her in because she will soon be sold abroad anyway. With a graceful bow, he replies to the couple that he will make all the arrangements. The manager comes to Beryl and tells him about Lucas yelling and losing 5,000. The Baron laughs that they always come back. He thinks to himself that he can get himself another servant and tells them to take them to a better room. But then he decides to take them himself and says that he will make this fool stick to this casino, no matter where he comes from. The Baron enters the room with Lennart and Lucas and introduces himself, saying that he engages in this establishment as a hobby. Lucas feigns amazement at the scope of the casino. Beryl modestly replies that there is no other entertainment in town. Being and hunting are too troublesome and tedious, and here there is peace and wine. Leonarda chuckles and chides Beryl, but says to herself that the Baron is just Prince Norton's monetary asset. Beryl asks what kind of girl they were looking for. The couple pretends not to remember her name exactly, but she's Lucas's type. They ask the Baron where the girl is. He replies with a wry smile that she is getting ready, and he has come with a gift for the couple. Assuring them that there is no danger, only pleasure, he waves his hand, and a cart like the one Lucas had seen the day before is rolled into the room. Following the manager with the cart, a guard enters the room with Logana, who can barely move her feet, hanging onto the guard. She is ordered to stop at the door. The couple squints at her with secret joy that the girl hasn't been sold yet. The Baron orders the cart to be brought closer to their couch, and Leonarda sees the wine glasses. It looks quite normal, but it has a strange foam. Leonarda realizes that something has been spiked in it. The Baron says with a proud smile that this wine is popular. It is actually from the Magic Tower, but Beryl managed to get it by chance. The couple looks at each other, and Lucas says with a nervous chuckle that he doesn't really want to try something unknown. But Beryl replies with a smile that it is a first-class drink, served only to the most important guests, and that he is personally responsible for its quality and safety. He sells glasses to the couple. Lucas is frantically thinking about what to do. If he gets intoxicated by this wine, the whole plan will go to waste. But Leonarda reaches out enthusiastically and grabs both glasses. She staggers back, and both glasses fly away, drenching her dress. Lucas praises her to himself, but laughs aloud, and tells the Baron that his Rosa loves to waste money. But Beryl pulls out a single glass and says it's a compliment for special guests. With a chuckle, he holds it out to Lucas and expresses his hope that they won't spill this glass. Leonarda realizes that the rogue has thought of everything. Bourne, on the other hand, is thinking about the need to get Lucas hooked on this potion by any means necessary. Leonarda realizes that Lucas can't get drunk, or they won't get Logan out of here. When she looks at the cart, she sees that there are no more glasses. Leonarda grabs the wine from the Baron's hands and drinks it in one gulp, saying that her companion is weak on alcohol and has had enough. Leonarda, having finished her drink and broken the glass on the floor, throws herself into Lucas's arms. The Baron is furious, as a man should be intoxicated, and quickly orders another glass to be brought. But the steward hesitates and asks the Baron to look at the couple. Lucas kissed a stunned Leonarda. The girl cannot understand the motives behind his behavior, but the Baron and the footman decide to escape. As they leave the room, the Baron is furious at the shameless couple. The manager offers to get rid of the girl, but Beryl says it's no longer convenient to go in there. He decides to think of something next time, but now he only regrets having wasted the potion on them. Stomping heavily, the Baron removes himself. In the room, tearing Lucas away from her, Leonarda is loudly indignant. He shouts back that she has no idea what this wine will do to her. Leonard asks with a smile if the passionate kiss was a hindrance to her not drinking more food. Lucas answers irritably that there can be no other reason, and drags her to the restroom to make the girl vomit as soon as possible. But Leonarda stops and tells him to look at the floor. There is a wine stain. Leonarda spat it all out when she threw herself into the prince's arms. She's not frivolous enough to drink the stuff. Lucas apologizes embarrassedly, and Leonarda thinks he kissed her just so he could drink the wine instead. And then they remember Logan still lying on the floor and rush over to her. Leonarda tries to remind the girl that they have seen each other, but she is clearly not thinking clearly under the influence of the potion. Leonarda puts the girl's arm around her shoulder and lifts her off the floor. Logana tries to ask why they are helping her, but Leonarda replies that she will explain later. She brings Logana to the prince and asks him to take her in his arms. Then she tells him to undress. Lucas is taken aback, but Leonarda yells at him to undress right away. Leonarda holds out an invisibility cloak to him. Lucas needs to undress, and they will put his jacket on Logan instead of her dress. Then he will bring her in his arms, and they will both be invisible. When asked how she will get out on her own, Leonarda replies that she has a plan. She will drink Sig Ireland's potion and become invisible, but she will have to undress completely. She has also borrowed a cloak from the wizard. She tells Lucas that there is a back door on the second floor, but Logana won't be able to climb over by herself. Lucas will have to take care of her. Lenarta will go out through the main door. It will be faster and safer than if they all go together. Lenarta drinks the potion, and Lucas, seeing it start to take effect, realizes why she had to strip naked. He jokes about the ghost. The girl replies that his head is floating in the air right now. Lenart says that the back door leads to the forest, where a carriage is waiting for them. That's where they are to meet. Lucas puts on his hood and wishes Lenart luck, slipping out into the day with Logana in his arms. Lenarta quickly pulls off her dress and runs down the main hall. The players turn and twitch as she rushes past, but they see nothing. She is very scared that the effects of the potion will wear off and she will be the very king from the fairy tale. In real life, this is considered a crime. She sees the main door and rushes to it, but it is closed, and there are 2 guards standing nearby. She can't just walk up and open the door. The guards will smell something wrong, just waiting for someone to come in or out. She hid behind the curtain just in case. There were a couple minutes left before the potion would wear off. She wouldn't have enough time to get back into the room. She rushes to the window, but it too is locked. Panicked, she rushes back to the curtain to cover herself, the potion about to evaporate. She may indeed become a naked king. Feverishly contemplating her hopeless situation, Lenarta curls up behind the curtain. Just then, Kier bursts through the door with the male bottle of wine and yells loudly, dumbfounded that he's drunk beyond belief. The guards come up to him and Kier, shouting something unintelligibly heroic, throws himself into the fight with them. Lenarta thanked him profusely, though she could not understand his motives. Lenart jumps up from her seat and runs with all her might to the open door. She manages to get out, but the end of the potion is only about a minute away. And then she feels someone grab her from behind and cover her with a ladle. She thinks with fear that the guards have seen her after all. Turning around, she hears Lucas's voice. He hugs Lenarta gently, wrapping his cloak around her shoulders, and jokes that he couldn't forget the moonlit beauty. She says that it was Kier inside. Lucas replies that he sent him. He waited for Lenarta at the door, but she didn't come out for a long time, so he asked Cyrus for help. Lucas adds that Logan is safely asleep in the carriage and that Cyrus can get out on his own. After quietly thanking him, Lenarta suddenly shouts how he saw her, the potion still working. He jokes about seeing a naked glowing beauty, but then admits that he only saw a silhouette. Lenarta looks at her hands and sees that she is already visible, Lucas having arrived with the cloak at almost the last moment. Annoyed, she tells Lucas not to do it again, and he says he expected praise. After grumbling some more, Lenarta asks where the carriage is. Lucas points and she hurries that way. But then Lucas notices that the girl is looking barefoot and picks her up in his arms. Lenarta shouts indignantly for him to put her in her place, but Lucas only laughingly replies that his mistress's feet can't get dirty on the muddy road and that she might hit him when they get to the carriage. Lenarta realizes that it is useless to argue, and to her surprise, realizes that she doesn't want to argue. Lucas, chuckling, carries her on. Later, they put Logana to bed with a wet towel on her forehead. Lenarta tells Lucas that she has done all she can. They can only wait for the potion to wear off. Lucas replies thoughtfully that they haven't gotten to the 4th floor, but at least they've gathered some information. For example, that the only way to get to the 4th floor was through magic. Lenarta replies that the Emperor would not put Baron Beryl on trial anyway. He couldn't cut off his heir's hand in front of all the people, and it is also inconvenient for His Majesty that the Baron was caught by the prince and not by him. She tells Lucas that it is worth persuading the Emperor, then Norton will be in dire straits without his money, and the Emperor himself will surely issue him a warning, for he is an accessory to a crime. Lucas thinks he should get rid of Norton at once, but he has too many allies. Lucas needs to proceed slowly, like a termite eating a wooden house. Lenarta hands Lucas a small vial. She says that she managed to stash some of Baron Beryl's wine. She replies to a surprised Lucas that she was able to spit some into the vial. With this vial, they will be able to figure out the composition of the potion, then they can avoid disturbing Logan. Lucas is surprised. Lenarta replies that she doesn't want to involve the poor girl as a witness. Lucas says that she is a direct participant in the events, and therefore the most important witness. Lenart asks with a sigh why they rescued her in the first place. Lucas reminds her that the tower is occupied with magical crimes, so a single potion is not enough as evidence. He asks Leonarda to explain herself. Leonarda sadly replies that she doesn't really know the reason for her decision. But it seems to her that there will be no trial at all, and when it is over, Logan will have no one to protect her. Norton or the Baron might hurt her when they find out about her and her role. Logana will be on the run for the rest of her life, escaping. Leonard thinks she should still consider whether she should participate in the trial, since she is just one of the victims. Mentally, Leonarda realizes that she herself is vulnerable right now. She could be forced to give birth at any moment. She needs to look after her own reputation, not someone else's. But she can't hypocritically put aside the girl they tried to sell into slavery. Lucas, after a little silence, agrees with her. There's no telling what his brother will be able to pull out due to the situation. But on the other hand, the palace won't be able to protect Logana forever. Lucas feels sorry for the time wasted in the rescue, but he won't claim Logana as a witness. He gets down on one knee in front of Leonarda and asks her not to look at him with those eyes. Leonarda snorts, and Lucas says that they will use the potion to shut down the casino. Leonarda immediately remembers the law they need and tells a surprised Lucas to go and read it. Businesslike, she stands up and hurries the prince to take care of business. But Lucas asks if Leonard knew that the wine was poisoned. She indignantly replies that she did not and that she herself was surprised. Lucas quickly realizes that Leonarda has prepared for everything because she had an empty vial with her, and she is surprisingly quick to think in dangerous situations. He says with a smile that her words that their meeting would bring the prince good luck were not just bragging. With a charming smile, Leonarda says she doesn't throw empty words around. She hurries the prince again, but he replies that someone is about to arrive. A furious Kier enters the room. He grits his teeth in anger, for they have left him in this hole and gone. He lashes out at the couple, telling them what he's been through. Leaning dramatically against the door jamb, he says he's heard things for the rest of his life. Lucas praises his acting and hurriedly leads him out. They must go to the palace. Business awaits. When he says goodbye to Leonarda, he tells her that a carriage is waiting downstairs to take her home. Left alone, Leonarda collapses exhaustedly on the sofa. She's terribly tired, but the infiltration into the casino turned out to be almost a success. Lucas had been surprisingly helpful, though she would have left him if something had gone wrong. Leonarda suddenly notices an invisibility cloak on the back of the sofa. When she got it from Sig Ireland, she had thought at first she would just run away and take the Duke's jewelry, but then she'd have to spend her life on the run. Leonarda my cloak, and thinks how good it is that Lucas helped her. Thinking back over the whole night, she realizes that he helped her even more than she had bargained for. Remembering his words that Leonarda should not walk barefoot in the mud, she buried her face in her cloak in embarrassment. She thought it was wrong for such a handsome man to say such words. She crushingly thinks that the prince will never be her soulmate anyway, nothing to worry about. She's seen nothing but high-born bums all her life, but she's not a fool. In the imperial palace, Lucas has already given the vial of wine to the emperor. He asks if he really needs to call the Baron in for questioning because of the vial. Lucas says that everything has to work according to the law, but his father replies that if it has to do with potions, the magic tower should handle the matter. At the very least, they need a victim of the slave trade. Lucas tells his father that there is one victim, and he's hiding her himself. The prince seriously wonders if Beryl can be punished for more than just the potion. After all, there are a lot of crimes going on in his casino that Lucas has seen with his own eyes. If they capture Beryl, they'll take all his money. They must do it, if only for the safety of the Empire and the Treasury. Father agrees, but there are obstacles. It's all about magic, so they have no right to arrest Beryl without the tower's intervention and without a witness. He asks Lucas what charge he intends to bring. His father demands that Lucas bring a witness if he wants the emperor to punish the Baron. Lucas asked his father to take a closer look. The potion in his hands is not just a potion, but wine. The prince reminds him of the same law that Leonarda said. According to it, it is forbidden to change the composition of alcoholic beverages arbitrarily. The emperor can't remember such a law, Lucas explains. Just a small addendum. But it's known to the people as Leah's Law. He's a former commander named Damien Leah, who got so drunk on some self-made stuff that he made the office therein sick. The emperor of that time valued this employee very much, so he did not fire him, but simply issued a law prohibiting the creation of such thermonuclear alcoholic mixtures. Now, in their empire, there is a heavy fine for such a thing. Lucas summarizes that this law would work in their case. Not only is there a potion in the wine, but something else explosive. The Baron keeps a gambling house and sells altered wine, which should be enough to shut the shop down. The emperor laughed at his son's insistence. When he arrived at the palace, he immediately rushed to check the code. He thinks Leonarda memorized the law because she found it amusing. Nevertheless, it should help convince the emperor. The emperor, however, stared thoughtfully at his son. He had been persistent before, but not so shrewd. It was probably because he now had a talented tactician, Leonarda, at his side. He threateningly asks his son who came up with the plan. He smilingly replies that he did, because he has imperial blood in him. The emperor pretends to believe him. He agrees to certify Baron Beryl under Leah's law and wants to give something to Lucas as a reward. He asks for an imperial decree on their engagement to Leonarda. Her father hesitates. She's the only daughter of the Camellia family after all. He can't act willfully. Lucas says that the family was going to get rid of her anyway. His father laughs at that determination, and Lucas cries out that this is his only love. His father says love isn't enough, and offers in return the palace where Lucas's mother spent her last days, the Roxian of blue hydrangeas. This palace has been called the most beautiful of all the emperor's estates. It has long been used as the empress's summer palace, now overseen by Norton's mother, Nantucket. The palace belonged only to empresses. It will be some kind of hint of a future engagement. His father says the rest is up to Lucas himself. He thanks his father and tells him to go. Keir catches up with him in the corridor and asks in a whisper, looking around, why Lucas didn't tell his father that Leonarda owns the White Eye. The emperor would have issued a decree of betrothal in a heartbeat. Lucas replies with a smile that it's her secret, and she didn't give permission to tell even the emperor. Besides, she is incredible without the White Eye. No need to mention her ability at all. He asks if Cyrus hasn't been taught that you can't spill other people's secrets. Keir replies that he thought the prince was putting things off because of his personal feelings. Surely he must have feelings for Leonarda. Lucas didn't deny it. He remembered her sleeping by Logana's bedside this morning. It was possible that he had his own special feelings for the girl, because she was so sweet. Later, Logana wakes up abruptly in an unfamiliar place, on an unfamiliar bed, and is very frightened. Leonarda is standing next to her with a bowl of water. She tries to explain to Logana what is going on, but she doesn't listen, jumps out of bed and tries to run away. Leonarda grabs her and tries to explain that they rescued her from slavery, but Logana doesn't believe her. She says she owes nothing for supposedly being rescued from somewhere. Just then, a little girl, Logana's sister named Nina, comes into the room and throws herself into Logana's arms, screaming. She screams that Miss Leonarda is not like that and demands nothing of Logana. Leonarda adds that it turns out that her sister was also looking for Logana. She asks incredulously if the nightmare is really over. Leonarda replies that yes, she can calm down. Logana hugs her sister and thanks them both fervently for saving her. Leonarda replies that she doesn't need much thanks, but Logana abruptly stands up and grabs her hands. She can't just say thank you for such a feat. Even though Logana only knows how to steal, even she knows about gratitude. She cries out eagerly that she will now serve Leonarda for the rest of her life and drops to one knee. Leonarda even worried about her knees, so sharply did the girl fall. Leonarda tries to lift the girl to her feet, as Apollonia suddenly enters the room to say that tea is ready. The maid sinned, and Leonarda asks her to help her lift a grateful Logana. A little later, Apollonia settles the matter. Leonarda will address Logana as you, and she will become the manager of the house. Leonarda declares that it is nothing, but she promises to try her best. Lucas walks into the room without knocking. He jokingly takes offense that the girls are already friends. Apollonia is horrified and asks Leonard who he is. She replies that he is the prince. Later, over tea, Lucas tells Leonard how it went. The Baron's casino was closed without any fuss, and the imperial treasury was considerably enriched. With a sly smile, Lenarta replies that she expected a more colorful scenario from the romantic prince. Lucas replies that his father does what is to his advantage, and nothing more. But something happened. The emperor gave him a Roxian of blue hydrangeas. Hearing this, Lenarta chokes on her tea, and Lucas smiles carelessly. She cries out that this is too much. The palace has always belonged to the empress after all. This means that Lenarta is now Prince Lucas's bride candidate, not just a lover. The people will compare her to the current empress, and the latter will ruin Lenarta. Also, Nantucket might suspect that the emperor is supporting his firstborn son rather than her son. Lucas says that the emperor seems determined to see the two ladies battle. He's a little upset at her conclusions. But Lenarta thinks it might even play into their hands. Anyway, if the empress wants to meet Lenarta, her father will have to do something. Apollonia declares that Lucas should come with full pockets on his next visit. Lenarta is going to the debutante ball and appears there in her creepy old-fashioned clothes. The empress is probably furious and wants to quarrel with Lenarta as soon as possible. But the girl has not yet made her debut, which means Nantucket cannot meet her. The empress will pressure the duke to bring her daughter out into the world. Chuckling, the prince realizes they need a fancy dress for the ball. He suggests they make a sensation in the Lycian Empire. Lenarta says that everyone will bet on them, but that's what Lucas needs. Everyone will be wondering if she likes him for his money or his beauty. At this time, Count Lavanova reports to the empress that Lucas has been given Roxian. His Majesty has already ordered the palace to be opened this morning. Nantucket calmly asks what the girl's name is. After repeating Lenarta Camelia's name, she says she wants to meet this girl. Imelda, meanwhile, reads the Duke's official order for Lenarta's debut. The stepmother is furious. A debut just before the wedding, that's nonsense. But that's an order from the Empress, not to be disobeyed. In addition, Nantucket has sent Alexandra, Norton's fiancée, to supposedly teach Lenarta etiquette. But Imelda realizes that this is simply an open declaration that they are being followed. Imelda shouts to the maid to bring Lenarta immediately. She can't show them the girl in a disheveled state, so let the servants prepare her. Later, a carriage led by Cyrus stops in the Duke's courtyard. In it lie suitcases and crates with dozens of gold bars, the servants whispering that it was all Prince Lucas sent to Mrs. Lenart. Lenarta, who has come down, can't believe her eyes. She runs up to Keir and he replies that it's from the prince, so let Lenarta buy whatever she wants. Lenarta whispers in confidence that this is all strange, that they should have sent jewelry, not money. Keir whispers indignantly that Lenarta has made the prince lose his head. The girl declared to the prince that she was a commoner, and he decided that they were soulmates. First the sudden desire to marry, then this sphere in the casino, and now he sent his beloved money instead of outfits. Still whispering, Lenarta asks why it's all because of her, and Keir replies that Lucas has gotten too bold. He coughs loudly and tells everyone present that it was a gift from the prince. There's about 150 gold pieces in the drawers. It's a gift from the heart. Let Lenarta spend it on herself. The servants are shocked. The money could buy a whole estate. Keir continues that the best dressmaker in the empire, Pals, is booked for a full week to make dresses for the debutante ball. With a bow, Keir delivers a personal invitation to visit from Prince Lucas. The servants whisper excitedly about the dressmaker. This is the same Pals who made the Empress's wedding dress, and she has an appointment booked up 6 months in advance. The prince is obviously very fond of Mrs. Lenarta, but then the palace servants arrive and start loading the crates back into the carriage. Lenarta asks Keir what this means. He replies that all the money will be deposited in Lenarta's personal account at the Imperial Bank, not in the Camellia family's account. Lenarta thinks with a smile that Lucas has thought of everything. If the gold had remained at the manor, her father and stepmother would have had their paws on it. She asks Keir to pass on her thanks to Lucas. Later, Lenarta arrives at the Pals Hotel and looks around enthusiastically. She is politely greeted by a lady with glasses, Lady Pals herself. Lenarta finds her reception even dry, but she doesn't know a thing about dresses, so it's better to trust a professional. She tells Pals, who bows politely and says that she will do her best to make sure that Lenarta's expectations are met. 3 hours later, Lenarta sits exhausted on the sofa next to Pals. She says something about fabrics and patterns, but Leonarda hardly listens to her, not expecting the dress to be so tedious. Pals asks Leonarda sternly what she thinks of everything the dressmaker has just suggested. She quickly replies that everything is at the dressmaker's discretion, thinking that she just wants to go home. Pals replies that Leonarda must see her future dress clearly. Leonarda doesn't understand why she needs it. She just wants a beautiful dress. Then the door opens, and Alexandra Lamisha enters the room. She says that if Her Majesty wears a golden dress and Lenarta chooses the same, she will immediately fall into disfavor with the Empress. Lenarta looks at her snow-white skin, her red hair, and the noble look of Lady Lamisha's green eyes, the sparkling opal necklace around her neck. The same says with a simple smile that it is a pleasure to meet Lady Camellia. She approaches Lenarta and says that the color of the dress is very important. For the banquet, it is better to wear iron, and to meet the Marquise Paris should not wear red. She cannot stand this color. It's a kind of language in society. Lenard thinks Alexandra is as beautiful as an angel and very noble. No wonder she's been in society's favorites for so long. It's hard not to like her. Alexandra extends her hand and says that she is very glad to finally meet Lady Camellia. Lenarda shakes her hand politely in return. She looks at the opal necklace around Alexandra's neck. It is her symbol. The Marquis of Lamicius adores his only daughter, so he made a unique piece of jewelry for her that will be passed down through the generations. Alexandra turns to Pals and asks how her arm is. She says, embarrassed, that it is better. Alexandra explains to Lenarda that Lady Pals has recently injured her finger. Lenart is struck by her kindness. Few aristocrats would pay attention to such trivialities in the lives of commoners. She thinks Keir was right. Alexandra really is perfect. With a smile, she thinks it's a good thing they met as planned. It turns out that a few days ago, Lenarda met with Lucas and Keir in a familiar inn to inform them of the Empress's letter. The Empress wants Alexandra to mentor her. They knew right away it was a way to keep tabs on Lenarda. She called this meeting so they could take action. Lenarda asks Kira what kind of person his sister is. Toth replies that she is considered perfect. When she does charity work with her fiancé Norton, she looks like some kind of sacred maiden. And around Norton at receptions, she resembles an ancient goddess. Everyone in the Empire calls her the diamond that illuminates Prince Norton's life. But Keir himself doesn't know if such a description is true. To Lucas and Lenarda's surprise, he has no contact with his sister. When he was 10 years old, he left to be trained as a knight. He's the second child, so he's not an heir. Becoming a knight was the best outcome for him. And he met his sister 8 years later when he returned home. Lenarda was surprised that he had returned to the manor. Keir explained that he himself supported Lucas, unlike most of the knights. And Alexandra was already engaged to Norton, so it was difficult for them to speak heart to heart. When he came back, his father yelled at him for breaking the family side of the family and even going back to the manor. He kicked Keir out of the house. He didn't expect to be welcomed, but it was still unexpected. But he met Alexandra in the hallway, and she greeted him very cordially. Keir said that she was the reason he had decided to serve Lucas instead of going back to the order. Keir doesn't think she's faking it. He himself can't stand deceit. If Alexandra were lying, Keir would be the first to know. Leonard asks another question. Is Lady Lamisha a cowardly person? Keir answers that she is not. Lucas asks what made her wary. She replies that despite her position, Alexandra is very modest. She does everything with Prince Norton. It's like she's hiding on purpose. Lucas thinks Alexandra is just fine with her being around the prince. But Lenarda is still tense about it. She would like to know what Alexandra thinks of herself. Lucas suggests they meet in private. He wants to invite a dressmaker and give Lady Lamisha a gift. He asks her to help him choose a dress for his beloved. This memory made Lenarda cough, and Pals and Alexandra got worried. After assuring them that everything is fine, Lenarda thinks about how to start the conversation. She realizes that all words will be passed on to the Empress, but there is nothing she can do about it. She flew up to Alexandra, asks if Lady Lamisha will be teaching her etiquette. She asks if Lenarda is satisfied with everything. The girl replies with a luscious smile that she would like to start quickly. Alexandra suggests starting by making a dress. And so, the Lenrada stands on the platform while Alexa and Pals twirl around her. They put different fabrics on her and discuss lace. Lenrada sees that half the day has passed, and she and Lady Lamisha still haven't had a chance to talk. She doesn't listen to what the ladies next to her are saying until Alexa calls out to her. She offers a choice of soft pink, but would have chosen a contrasting blue herself. Seeing the fabric on herself in the mirror, Lenrata is shocked, but freezes. She tells Alexa that she likes it and that she can just call her by her first name. Alexandra says the same thing, and that her brother told her as if Lenrata was shy. But now she sees that she isn't. Lenrata feigns embarrassment and imagines Kier, holding back laughter, lying to her sister about Lady Camelia's shyness. Palma asks them to look at the jewelry that was sent to Lenarta to adorn the dress. Alexa immediately suggested choosing pearls or sapphires. Pearls would look wonderful on the sleeves. Lenarta sucks up a little and, clapping her hands, asks about the pearl necklace. But Pals and Alexa look at each other strangely, and then Alexa says that unmarried ladies don't wear pearls. Pearls are associated with tears. That's why everyone who wears pearl jewelry later says how tragic their marriage was. Lenarta decides to choose the pearls anyway. Alexa said they would match the dress. Lenarta doesn't want to avoid something deliberately. Putting the stone to her ear, she says that she can see for herself that it suits her. Alexa bows her head for a second in response, but quickly says that we can make a necklace then. Lenarta thought she looked sad for a moment. At last, evening comes, and Pals and Lady Lamisha decide that it is time to finish their preparations for the day. Lenarta, exhausted as if tortured, can barely sit up in her chair. She asks excitedly if the outfit is done. Alexa says that the main dress is done, but that 4 more dresses are needed. Lenarta suddenly realizes why her stepmother was so angry when Lenarta stole her dress the night she first met Lucas. They take a tea break. Alexa graciously thanks Pals and praises the wonderful chamomile flavor. Lenarta can't take her eyes off her. Alexa even drinks her tea in a very refined way. Alexa asks what is the matter, and Lenarta replies bluntly that she has glimpsed her elegant manners. Now it is clear why the Empress had Alexa teach Lenarta. She asks how Lady Lamisha manages to move so smoothly, as if she were fluttering. She laughs and replies that it's like a dance. You have to put your fingers together. Lenarta doesn't understand, and Alexa realizes that Lady Camelia must not have been taught to dance. Lenrata is embarrassed, but Alexa bluntly asks the reasons why. Lenrata realizes that she is a mystery, since she has been practically kept out of the house her entire life. Alexa has clearly been sent to keep an eye on her. She lies that her body has been weak since birth. Then she admits that she is the Duke's illegitimate daughter. Her stepmother, of course, thinks she's ugly. Lenrata did not receive a proper aristocratic upbringing and education because her father was completely indifferent to his daughter's life. The emperor, for example, takes care of the Empress Dowager and his wife. Even aristocrats have mistresses, but the children of such unions are considered a disgrace. Such children have to answer for the sins of their parents. Lenarta wonders if Alexandra will despise her as much as Norton, who is supported by the bulk of the nobility. She is not just an aristocrat, but the crown prince's fiancée. Lenarta hopes that the White Eye will clue her in on whether Alexa is withholding her attitude towards her. She is very interested to see what Lady Lamisha will say to Lenarta's story, and Alexa suddenly grabs Lenarta's hands across the table and apologizes. She had heard many rumors before meeting Lady Camelia. She had guessed that Lenarta was the fruit of her father's sin, but she hadn't expected to hear the confession in person. Surely she must have hurt Lenarta with her questioning. She swears she meant no offense to Lenarta. She looks at her carefully, realizing that this is not the look of a liar, and White Eye is silent. Alexa is indeed a saintly, empathetic girl. Lenrata herself is embarrassed. This is not how she was going to present this story. She asks Alexa not to worry. That's probably why Her Majesty sent her to Lenarta. She says she is very glad that such a clumsy girl had the chance to train with such a graceful lady as Alexa. Lenarta says that she always thought she deserved nothing but contempt for her origins. Alexa immediately interrupts her. She likes Lenarta's honesty. She noticed it when she picked out the pearls. Alexa can't find the words, and Lenarta laughingly suggests that she is also rude. Flustered, Alexa says that she doesn't think Lenarta is bad. She replies with a smile that it is mutual. Lenarta thinks to herself that Alexa may still have hidden intentions, because this whole conversation will be passed on to the Empress. Leonarda can't believe a knucklehead like Norton has such a kind-hearted and kind fiancé. Surely she must have her own motives for holding on to him. Later, Alexandra arrived at the palace and went straight to the Empress and the Prince, who were having tea. The Prince rose from the table and with a charming smile invited her to sit down. They were waiting for her. He asks her what is wrong with Lady Camellia. Alexandra replies that she is a good person. Norton snorts. To Alexei, bad people don't exist. The Empress asks about the validity of the rumors, saying she has a striking character. Norton adds that even though Leonarda is a bastard, she walks around with her head held high and sasses everyone. Alexa ponders what she would answer them. The Leonarda she met today is not superstitious. She has an inner core. She is honest and not vain, but at the same time insightful and witty. Alexa remembered with a smile how Leonarda had asked her where to put the stones on her dress to attract all eyes. Normally noble women are fond of jewelry, but Leonarda wasn't being greedy, just wondering how best to use them. But Alexa can't tell Norton and his mother things as they are. Alexa tells them that Leonarda is honest and describes the pearls episode. Norton laughs it off, saying it's terrible arrogance. Alexa tries to object, but he won't listen to her because Alexa is too kind. Alexa says that when she asked about the reclusiveness, Lenratha herself confessed her origins. The Empress is very surprised. Alexa immediately adds that this was said after the line about poor health. Here the Empress laughs loudly at the fact that Alexandra immediately believed Leonarda. She tells a dazed Alexa that she is too benevolent, and this trait of hers will be an obstacle with Lady Camellia. She tells her son that it's a good thing they sent good-natured Alexa. Her naivety will play into their hands. He asks what else she has to tell him. A frustrated Alexa replies that they were only discussing fabrics and jewelry. Norton can't believe it took all day. Alexa says that Leonarda doesn't have enough dresses, and they start laughing that Leonarda must have been crazy about all the rags. Alexa doesn't know what to do. Everything she said was immediately ridiculed, and she herself cannot even say a word in defense of poor Leonarda. Nantucket and Norton laugh at the fact that Commoner Lucas and Commoner Leonarda have found each other. With a wicked grin, Norton says it would be funny if the couple had a baby. But unfortunately for them, things don't happen that chaotically. Alexa is frozen, she can't utter a word. The two of them begin to communicate only on topics they know about, ignoring Alexandra completely. She recalls how her maid used to comb her hair and rejoice over Alexa's future marriage. She assured her that she would fall in love with Prince Norton as soon as they met, because he was such a wonderful man. Alexandra, pressing her hand to her chest, suddenly realizes why her heart hurts so much. They were right. The thing is, she's not proud at all. Leonarda's newspaper carries an article stating that the new owner of the long-empty Roxion is Lucas Lycaeus. It follows that he is the main contender for the title of the future emperor. All over the city, without exception, everyone was discussing the news. But no one knew anything, except that the aristocrats who supported Norton must be furious. And in the palace, Count Lavinova threateningly reprimands the servants by smashing a cup on the floor. Even those closest to the court do not have such information, so who do they think gave such a thing to the press? The servants try to calm him down, but in vain. But the Count tells them it's no joke. The journalists have hit Norton's reputation, which means they will soon be praising Lucas. He throws the newspapers into the burning fireplace and says that they need to find out immediately who runs the Lycian Gazette before control of the food is lost, because it is the most influential source of information for the population. The inn where Logan now temporarily works discusses these intrigues. Duke Camellia supports Norton, but his daughter is in love with Lucas. The Duke has not visited the palace for a long time because of health problems, and now he is losing contact with Prince Norton. Drinkers speculate that Lucas has his sights set on the Dukes. After all, the Camellia have long held a lot of weight in the empire. One of them asks if the Camellias are afraid that their gift of the white eye will leak to the imperial family. Logana, collecting mugs, overhears this conversation. But then the other one replies that it's simple. The Duke has assigned a terrific strategist to Lucas. And at Duke Leonard's house, she tiredly asks Apollonia how things are with public opinion. Logana has sent her a letter about a conversation she overheard at the inn. Apollonia hesitated for a moment. Some people think Prince Lucas is interested in famous people, but others think it's all to interest Duke Camellia. However, no one doubts Leonarda's sincerity. Apollonia doesn't understand why people are so slow-witted. After all, if you think about all the people Lucas has met lately, it all becomes clear at once. Leonarda replies that some are unhappy with her looks, and some are quibbling about her worth. Hardly anyone seriously believes that Leonarda can be seen to be scheming and not just a fool in love. Alexandra enters the room, knocking, as beautiful as ever. A few days ago, with great difficulty, but with Alexa's help, the dresses were finished. But dresses alone are not enough to succeed at a ball. Today, Alexandra has come to the duchy to teach Leonard how to dance and etiquette. After a while, Leonarda already feels exhausted. It was as if she were trying to dance between the stalks of thorns. Whispering that it was all beyond her strength, she collapsed to the ground. But Alexandra sternly tells her to stand up, because it hasn't even been an hour since they started rehearsals. She asks her to tense up and they continue to learn the stance, toe pulls and standing up straight. Alexa tells her to move smoothly, otherwise her movements look stiff. Leonarda thinks it's easy for her to say, but for someone who has never danced in her life, it is impossible. She sees Alexa as a stern, unquestioning sports coach. Leonarda is sprawled on the floor, but Alexa praises her for not giving up. Besides, because of the dress, the abruptness of her movements won't be so noticeable, and the prince will lead the dance. Leonarda is surprised that she will dance with the prince, and Alexa replies that it is obvious, there is no one else to dance with. After all, Leonarda is his lover, and it is known to the whole empire. She wonders what their first dance will be like. Alexa says that unmarried Leonarda can dance with other gentlemen, but the prince will be uncomfortable. Saying she couldn't let her lover experience such an embarrassment, Leonarda firmly asked Alexa to repeat the turn training. Moving diligently, she thinks about what it takes to accomplish her goal. Unintentionally, she stepped on Alexa's foot. Outside the door was Lucas. He was sneaking a peek and is now bending over with laughter. Apollonia asks him to go to the living room instead of standing here. But Lucas does not listen to her, but continues to watch Leonarda. He has not yet seen these emotions of hers. Now he is looking forward to her debut at the ball. The dance class is finally over, but Leonarda has managed to sneak away without Lucas noticing. He finds her in the garden, lying on a bench. He asks if she is still alive and removes a leaf stuck to her hair. He asks if she is still alive and takes off the leaf stuck to her hair. Lucas asks if she likes her new dresses. She says she looks silly in them. The outfits themselves are beautiful, but she doesn't know how to wear them. Lucas assumes that Leonarda's bad mood is related to dancing. She complains that all her muscles ache so much that she can't sleep. Alexa, though sweet, can be a real tyrant. Leonarda asks in return how he's doing with the dancing. But for sure he has it easy. He looks like a man who handles everything easily. Lucas laughs. If that were the case, he wouldn't have cooperated with Leonarda. When he returned to his father, he had organized an unprecedented ball at the palace. Lucas had to show off brilliantly as the new prince. But his dance was terrible, and all the nobles laughed. Lucas felt miserable. He didn't understand what the importance of dancing was. Leonarda says that some people care about dancing. Lucas replies that he didn't know that until he got home, like the rest of the rules. For example, that the rules were to drink at least a glass of sparkling wine and to dance certain dances together with everyone else as soon as the music played. But he didn't know what to dance. No one had told him. To make a difference, Lucas had no money. As a guard, he shared a uniform with another man. Leonarda is surprised. He didn't tell her he was a guard. He mostly stood at the gate at Leventon Manor, the one closer to the north. It's an extremely infertile, cold place. The people of the capital can't even imagine it. His father, the first time they had dinner together, was very cordial to him. It was as if he wanted to make up for Lucas's hungry years. Lucas looked at the sumptuous dishes, but felt it was all for nothing. One crystal glass could pay for a uniform for 3 guards. He admits to Leonard that he still thinks about it sometimes. He just wants to tell her that he understands her, because he too gets into uncomfortable clothes every day. Leonarda realizes that his carefree face is just a mask. She says ironically that she thought she was the most pathetic person in the empire because of the fact that she couldn't replicate all those turns. But Lucas Lycaiste at 18 was a little more pathetic. She says everyone has their own uncomfortable clothes and their own battle. The guards have lats, and they have dresses or suits. Now in his 22s, Lucas knows the crystal glass is full of hypocrisy. Laying her head on his shoulder, she says that the Lucas she sees would handle any outfit equally, in her metaphorical sense. To the surprise of both of them, she ran her fingers along his cheek, but quickly withdrew her hand. Lucas intercepted her and pressed it to his lips, saying he wasn't sure yet because he really needed a lady. She calls him an opportunist. He laughs. Letting go of her hand, Lucas quickly changes the subject and asks how she likes Alexa. Leonard thought Alexa seemed really nice. Norton seems to be okay too, since such a wonderful girl loves him. Lucas asks about the possibility of a hidden agenda, and Lenarta replies that she sees only one, namely to make her a dancing goddess. Lucas laughs and asks about the date of the ball. Leonard replies that the Duchess wants to delay this moment until the last moment. Lucas says that then they will spend was in half a month. Lenarta is surprised that Lucas can solve this issue. He says it's the opening of the Roxian. A bunch of people are invited. The Emperor can't come, but Nantucket will. Lucas will send an invitation to the Duchess too, so they'll finally get together. Lenarta starts to get angry, and Lucas quickly says that they can just have a tea party with the mothers and end the opening there. With a sigh, Lenarta agrees to go to the Roxian opening. Lucas assures her she'll love the palace. The hydrangeas bloom at that time, and the palace is the most beautiful place in the empire. Except that a scream is heard in Roxian. Keir runs to it and sees that all the beautiful hydrangeas for which the toxin is famous have disappeared without a trace. Lucas immediately rushed to the palace. You can see that it looks much worse in person. Bare earth in the middle of the greenhouse. Keir is pouncing on the steward. Prince Lucas is to have a magnificent feast in this palace, and the steward is especially asked to keep a close eye on everything. He replied that they had done everything possible. They had repaired the statues, darned the curtains, and made the palace, which had been empty for 10 years, look decent. Cyrus irritably tells him to stop thinking and making excuses. Then the steward quickly says that the Empress's gardeners have come. He and his gardeners were exhausted from working on the garden and did not sleep for several nights. The manager decided that the Empress's gardeners would help them and gave the job to them. Lucas thinks for a moment, then says it's partly his fault. He allows the manager to leave, and Keir shrieks uncomprehendingly. Lucas replies that if they give them the manager, it will be revealed that it was Lucas who drove them away with his unrealistic deadlines. Besides, they don't have much time to decide what to do about the mess in the greenhouse. Looking around at the devastation, Keir loudly resents the scoundrels who dared to do such a thing a week before the reception. Lucas tells him to be quiet. Even the walls have ears. They wondered how the intruders had managed to get rid of so many bushes. Even the court magicians had to work long hours to get the hydrangeas blooming in time for the reception. Keir suggests that they start by asking around the flower shops. Lucas is horrified by the whole mess. He says that Lenarta will probably be angry because he has inadvertently deceived her with the promise of blooming hydrangeas. Just then, Norton enters the greenhouse with the Earl of Lavanova. He has come because he heard about Roxian's discovery. Norton looks around in surprise and asks where all the flowers are. Lucas sees genuine surprise in his brother and his assistant. Apparently, this time the Empress acted alone. He says with fake embarrassment that the hydrangeas are not ready yet. He supposedly ran out of time. But the Count replies that Lucas has nothing to be ashamed of. Since he had invited the Duke's daughter here, she should have been the one to make all the arrangements. To himself, he gloats. The young Duchess is still not up to her status, and Prince Lucas is forced to do the woman's work. Lucas realizes this is a backstabbing. He decides to endure and hid the anger, as it is customary for aristocrats. With a smile, Lucas thanks the Count for his support, and he thinks that the prince did not even realize the mockery. Lucas teases with a smile that if someone, meaning the Empress, hadn't abandoned the place, the prince wouldn't have to do women's work. The Count froze with surprise. Lucas dared to say such a thing about the Empress. But the prince immediately retreated, saying that he could think so, but still he did not. He doesn't think work can be divided into women's and men's. Her Majesty is busy with matters of state, and you can't criticize her for that. The Count bows in embarrassment, thinking that Lucas isn't as idiotic as he seems. Norton, looking at Lavino with contempt, thinks that the old man has fallen into his own trap. Lucas suddenly approaches his brother and puts his hand on his shoulder, asking him to convey to the Empress his thanks for the hydrangeas. Norton is confused, but immediately realizes that the disappearance of the flowers is her doing. The beau sees his confusion and thinks he was right. Nantucket was acting alone. Lucas says that he will try very hard to make Roxanne a pleasant place for both himself and the second Empress. With a dismissive smirk and leaving to pick a flower, Norton replies that he's looking forward to it. There's something else Norton is looking forward to. They say his brother's in love. Norton can't wait to see the girl who's supposed to show up here. Alexandra had already told him that Lady Camellia was kind and beautiful, and that she was very fond of Brother Norton. Lucas blushed slightly. During his 5 years in the palace, no lady had been able to win his heart, and now there were rumors about him and the mysterious lady all over the country. Lucas replies with a sly smile that he'd really like to see Lucas in love. Lucas replies that it takes half an hour to get to Roxanne, and Norton is so appreciative of his brother that he has come here out of curiosity. However, Norton may no longer bother to go all that way to meet his brother, because Lucas has no interest in him at all. Lucas turns away and asks him to excuse him. He has a lot to do. Norton leaves, saying he'll be waiting in anticipation. Lucas and Keir look at him condescendingly. Lucas relaxes and tells Keir that he can't believe Norton is his brother. So cold he is. Keir cheers him up, telling him that Lucas did a great job. Lucas is surprised by this. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, he says casually that the poison from Leonarda's tongue got to him when he kissed her in the casino. When he hears this, a stunned Keir rushes to the prince, asking if what he has just heard is true, not even looking in the direction of the servant who greets him. Everyone is annoyed with him, and he remembers something that happened a few years ago. One day, his teacher brought Norton to his father's study and praised him in front of the emperor. Norton scored top marks on the exam, with amazing skills and abilities. The emperor listened, half listened to him, and also grudgingly praised the little fellow. He added, however, that effort was not the master of virtue. It was not something in which Norton would excel. The father let the boy go. Norton apologized and left. As he walked out, he saw his father clutching his head, with the words that Lucas was a smart boy too, and wish he were here. It struck Norton to the core. The father was completely oblivious to Norton, pining for his missing son. Later, he saw his mother yelling at the maid for daring to mention Lucas's name, because the only prince and heir is in the palace, and it's Norton. The maid begged for an extension, but the empress threw her out with shame. She always acted arbitrarily, on the pretext that it was for her son's sake. Norton has heard rumors of his mother's tyranny, and that he himself turns a blind eye to it. But no one is interested in his feelings or reputation, not even his father, who grieves for another son, and his mother, who only pampers Norton. He doesn't intend to let it happen again. He enters his mother's chambers, and she calmly says, answering a silent question, that it was she who ordered the destruction of all the hydrangeas. Norton asks if there was no other way, as it reflects on his reputation. Nantucket replies that a fortune-teller advised her to do it. She said she had to destroy the hydrangeas before the end of this month, or they would attract something bad. Norton is stunned. This all happened because of stupid prejudices. Nantucket replies with an innocent smile that she could do it after the ball, but she won't have time. She adds that she's a woman, which means nothing will happen if she lets herself get a little naughty. There's nothing wrong with idle gossip. And this girl, with whom Lucas is in love, wants to attract all eyes in Roxanne. Nantucket can't let the aristocrats see Leonarda surrounded by hydrangeas and associate Roxanne with the Empress in any way. And now she would stand there alone, like a wasteland. And everyone will see her as Duke Camelia's headache. People will see her as a very unsuitable candidate to marry Prince Lucas. It would only be to Norton's advantage. No matter how charming and beautiful Leonarda was, if the Empress were to make her hatred known, people would not dare approach her. Besides, Nantucket would be at the ball too. The Empress gently touched her son's cheek and tried to explain her feelings. She was willing to do absolutely anything for him. But Norton took her hand away and asked her to warn him first next time. But to himself, he noted her words about being ready for anything. Leonarda and Lucas, meanwhile, are talking about the garden. He laments that they will have to start from scratch. It wasn't just hydrangeas that were ripped out, even some of the good trees. He gives credit to the Empress's men. They managed to pull it all off in just a day. Lucas apologizes for ruining Leonarda's debut. It was his fault for not thinking through the Empress's intrigues. Leonarda asks what they should do about the scorching sun in the garden. They need to come up with some shade. Lucas decided to set up a gazebo in the courtyard. He instructed Kier to find some small flower pot, and they would probably have to use the help of magicians. Leonard asks how much magic can do. Lucas replies that it is not possible to grow something again, but it is possible to make buds that have already blossomed. But it's unknown if the hydrangeas at the ball will be able to be secured. After all, it's still an imperial reception. This is the first time in 20 years that Roxanne has had such difficult problems. Leonarda offers some way out and starts whispering something quickly in Lucas's ear. Lucas replies in amazement that Leonarda is a consummate genius when it comes to annoying others, and so the day of the debut comes. Apollonia finishes Leonarda's preparations and says she can't believe it. It's the first time the mistress has been in her own dress, and in the past, they've always questioned someone else's. Leonarda assures her that it won't happen again. Attend Lucas's ball on this day. They are interested to see Roxanne after 20 years of downtime and Prince Lucas's bride. They say she's even more beautiful than Alexandra. The Knight-in-Chief Sir Ethan is outraged that Roxanne has been given to a prince who hasn't even been matched with a consort. He openly expresses his anger to Cyrus on his way to the ball. He is allowed to openly discuss and condemn the emperor, as they have been friends since childhood. He asks what Lucas says. Cyrus sighs that Lucas stands his ground. Shaking his head, Ethan says that he knew Lucas wasn't a wimp, but he wasn't aware of the fact that he likes to defeat those around him. Norton, unlike him, is always a paragon of integrity. And Lucas doesn't seem like the type to throw a ball. After complaining a little more to Kier, Ethan demands to tell him more about Leonard. Kier has no idea how to describe this insolent, self-confident, and willful girl better. Kier starts to express something vaguely, but Ethan asks him to speak directly. Kier replies that he can see for himself soon. Ethan tells him to go to the Valley of the Magicians. Kier doesn't really want to go, even though he has to. He's afraid of leaving Lucas behind. Ethan replies that that's why he's asking, because the two princes are about to collide. A father and two sons are tired of fighting each other. Roxanne only looks like a reward, but is actually a signal for war. It's better for Cyrus to take a quick trip and come back than to go there in the middle of a battle. Otherwise, he won't be able to protect the man he serves. Ethan, smiling slyly, says that when Kier said he intended to serve Lucas, the commander-in-chief thought it was foolish. But now he's changed his mind. Maybe it's about that paper. He says that Kier isn't stupid. And Ethan isn't the only one who will be watching Lady Camellia tonight to see what kind of person she is. He hopes Prince Lucas took his choice of bride seriously. Kier wonders what Lenratha is really like, but Ethan starts walking faster. He can't wait to see the newly discovered Roxanne. He doesn't expect to see the famous hydrangeas after this day. Kier tries to stop him, but he doesn't listen and runs into the hall. He sees that there are no flowers and is very confused. The other guests also snort, saying that this is no longer the same Roxanne, but a simple greenhouse, and there is no dancing in this atmosphere. Ethan admits that the atmosphere is getting tense. Then Prince Lucas is announced, and he walks springily over to Ethan. Lucas asks his opinion, which he thinks is very unusual. Ethan is confused, and Lucas replies that it's a joke. He says that after 20 years of desolation, Roxanne had to be cleaned up a bit. Norton approaches with the Empress on his arm. He states that this is unheard of boldness on Lucas's part, and that things haven't changed much in the past week. Lucas gives Nantucket a bow. She covers herself with a fan and says that she has come to Roxanne for the first time in a long time, and this picture was a surprise to her. She is so sad to be without flowers in season out of bloom. Lucas smiles, saying that the flowers were sick after so many years without supervision. He wished he could nurse them back to health instead of throwing them away, but he didn't have the option since someone else had solved the problem for him. Nantucket pretends not to know what this is about. Lucas says that there are rumors about his affair with a lady. It has to do with hydrangeas in that no flower compares to the beauty of this lady. The guests are impressed by this line, but Norton says he is upset. He assumes that Lucas won't hide the girl, but will show her to all of them. Lucas replies that his brother is right. Lenrata is suddenly in the audience. Lucas introduces her as the second flower of the camellia family and says that he cannot help but love this woman. Lenrata, however, modestly greets the Empress, eyes downcast. She bows gracefully under the arm of Prince Lucas, more beautiful than ever. There are whispers around that Lenrata is too simple for Prince Lucas, although she is really beautiful. Alexandra is still prettier, but love is blind, and rumors often exaggerate things. The Empress, however, looks condescendingly at the couple and thinks that the long wait for the incredible Lenrata was not worth it. Too tanned, no jewelry. Without the gorgeous gown, she's just an ordinary commoner. Compared to Alexandra, she's nothing. And here's the moment when Lucas presents his beloved to the Empress with various epithets. The owner of the White Eye, the territories in the duchy, and his rainbow friend, Lenrata Camellia. Nantucket and Lucas look at each other and think the same thing. That in this way, Lucas wanted to remind them that Lenrata is an aristocrat, no matter what. Out loud, however, the Empress says that she is pleased to meet Lenrata. She regretted that Lady Camellia's debut had taken place in a place like this, without a single flower. Surrounded by hydrangeas, she would have been received more leniently. Lenrata thinks she is well aware of all those devouring glances. She knows that she has an unassuming figure and thin hair that doesn't compare to that of other ladies. Brown eyes not common to the nobility. An ordinary pretty girl who has nothing but her pretty looks. Lenrata bows to the Empress and introduces herself, and then, as if by magic, the hydrangeas in the hall bloom. Nantucket looks around in horror as she orders them destroyed, but the flowers fall from the sky. Flowers fall directly into the hands of the guests, and Lenrata thinks that if an outwardly mediocre person shows charm in time, the situation will suddenly change. She says politely that she is pleased to meet the Empress and His Highness Prince Norton. They stand there, lost in the rain of hydrangeas. Ethan thinks in admiration that when this girl says a word, a flower falls from the sky. They must have found the hydrangea food and somehow magically pulled off this trick. Even though it's obviously a magic trick, it's still impressive. He asks how they were able to create such a classy impression after disappointing the guests with an empty garden. The prince has found himself a stunning bride, and Nantucket and her son are caught off guard. Norton steps on the flowers and gloomily thinks Lucas is very dodgy. Lucas asks with a smile if it's true that it's a magnificent sight, because that's exactly how he feels around Lenrata. It's like a million flowers blooming at once. The girl hides her face against his chest in feigned embarrassment. The people around them have changed their mood. They are now happy for the couple. Lenrata whispers to Lucas in excitement that the plan was perfect. Everything worked out perfectly. He whispers for her to hide those emotions. She thinks it's about time she thought of that fairy tale. It's about a long time ago there was a girl who was bullied by everyone. But one day, she helped a poor old woman who turned out to be a witch. And the sorceress conjured up a gift for the girl so that flowers and gold would fall from her lips at every word. The story of a poor girl's blessing. A few days before the reception, Lenrata had told this tale to Lucas. He had never heard it, and she belatedly remembered that the tale did not exist in this world. He doesn't see what this has to do with their problem. Lenrata points out the flower moment from the girl's mouth. Empress Nantucket took away all the hydrangeas, so Lenrata will become a flower herself. Spitting flowers she will not, of course. She asks where Lucas put all the flowers cut by the Empress. There were so many of them that it was impossible to burn them all. She asks to leave the garden empty, so her exit will be more impressive. Lucas jokes about her being the prettiest of all the flowers, and Leonard palpably smacks him upside the head. She wants the flowers to start spinning in the air every time she says the word, like the girl in the fairy tale. Lucas laughs and says she's a genius. Lenrata replies that it's all a grudge that has been cultivated and strengthened over decades. They need to team up with the mages anyway. She asks him not to worry too much about it, and that her friend Giselle will sort it out. Lucas discusses the plan with the mages. The two mages discuss that these are after all the same hydrangeas that were grown with their magic, but they are much more beautiful before the Empress cut them down. They eagerly exclaim that they are ready to avenge the spoiled work. Lucas calmly decides to leave the matter to them. And so, at the ball, they reap with satisfaction the result of the Empress's misdeeds and the mage's resentment. Lenratha sweetly thanks Nantucket for such a debut. Thanks to her, everything came out just right. The Empress dryly replies that flowers are always beautiful and asks to end this conversation. Lucas approaches the bride and asks how she is. Lenarta replies that the conflict was not avoidable. But now is the time to showcase her talents. She is instantly surrounded by gentlemen, and the ladies whisper that the couple cried for 3 days and 3 nights, begging for permission to marry. Lenarta goes around the guests and joins in the conversations. She shows an awareness of every issue to show her erudition. Stirring up rumors is a spitting image. Now was the time for all the rumors she'd gathered from the paper to shine through her oratory skills. She won't have to be cooped up anymore. Lucas watched her with a smile until it was time for their first dance. He walked up to her and held out his hand with a smile, asking her to do the honor. She smilingly sells him her hand and remembers her fantasies about their first dance. And now the reception is in full swing, and everyone has to accept that the girl Lucas has found is quite interesting. But besides looks, this lady also has an extraordinary charm, and there's nothing wrong with her dancing monstrously, stepping on Lucas's feet. Empress Nantucket glanced angrily at them and thought irritably about the fact that the prince had dishonored her by bringing this maiden to the ball. After the ball, Lucas and Lenarta sit together on the couch, and she asks him if his feet hurt. She estimates that she has stepped on him 7 times at least. Lucas playfully replies that it is not in his power to distract himself from her beautiful eyes. Lenrata asks him just as jokingly where he learned to speak so sweetly. Lucas replies that all lovers become poets. She says that if he were a poet, Lucas would have starved to death by now. Lucas says she's too callous to the imperial family. She doesn't seem to be afraid of the consequences. Lenarta replies that if she isn't good enough, it was his choice. Lucas laughs. It's like he had an epiphany. He asks how she knows that fairy tale about the good girl. Lenrata evasively replies that she simply remembers it from her childhood. Lucas assumes that different tales are told in different regions. He asks what happens to the girl at the end of the story. Lenarta replies that the protagonist escapes from her evil stepmother and is caught by the prince. They immediately get married. Lucas assumes that the prince has fallen in love with the girl. But Lenarta replies that the prince could have fallen in love with the riches flying from the girl's lips. Lucas says it's obvious the prince loved her kind heart. If all he wanted from her was money, he would have locked her up. He admits that at first he thought Lenarta had made up the fairy tale. It's so much like their own story. He is a prince who admires Lenarta and wants her to marry him. Lenarta had not thought about it, but now she agrees with Lucas. Suddenly, Lucas gets down on one knee in front of her. He says that the prince from the fairy tale interests him. For money, he could just sit and talk to the girl without stopping. Lucas puts Lenarta's hand on his cheek and says that obviously there is only one reason to marry a good girl. It's falling in love. Lenarta is stunned, but realizes that the outcome of the tale is obvious. The king was curious as to why gold was falling from the girl's lips, and she told him the truth. The king was immediately won over by her kindness, but Lenarta is uncomfortable with that look from Lucas and doesn't even have anything to say to him. She snorts and pulls her hand away, saying that the king was probably just very poor. Lucas thinks there's been a misunderstanding since she's avoiding his touch so much. He rises and leans over Lenarta, who is huddled on the couch. Gently touching her cheek to remove a stuck hydrangea petal, Lucas says he disagrees with her. He realized, watching Lenarta, that he had been to countless receptions, but none as important as today's. He recalls that Roxian was his late mother's palace. Lucas doesn't remember her well, but the palace is still a special place to him. And looking at Lenarta surrounded by hydrangeas today, his heart was pounding like crazy. He leans even closer to her and pulls his hand to her face again, saying she is the most beautiful, the most adorable, like the most obnoxious child. Lenarta immediately comes to her senses. Lucas chuckles, saying his heart sank at the sight of her shamelessly flapping eyes. Her obnoxiousness is enough for 100 empresses. The sight of the girl so indifferently drawing attention to herself was horrible. Lenarta clenched her fists in rage. Lucas had said the plan was perfect. She punches him and then grabs him on the chest. Lucas looks at her and thinks that in that fairy tale, the king was definitely enchanted by the girl. Although at first he was really interested in the money. The next morning, the newspaper said that the Empress of Nantucket had tried to ruin the reception by destroying an hydrangeas in Roxyon. However, Prince Lucas has chosen a worthy girl to make a fascinating political statement. Given all of Roxyon's long discussions, Lucas clearly proved his resolve by making Lenarta Camellia the protagonist of the reception. Lenarta was sitting in her room with a newspaper in her hands when Sig Erlan flew in through the window. He had already heard about the stunning debut. Rumors of Lenarta's cleverness had even reached the Mage Tower. Lenratha thanked him, for if that little bird had not created a successful magic formula, Lenratha would have only made herself look like a helpless girl. Sig Erlan proudly stuck out his chest. In honor of this, she has a gift for the wizard. She sells him a bowl of top-grade breadcrumbs. Sig Erlan wondered if she really thought he was a bird. He was the best wizard in the tower. But then his gaze fell on the bowl, and he began to drool unnoticed. Later, having had enough to eat and reclining lazily on his back on the windowsill, he asks Lenarta what the meaning of the flowers was, and how it will help her become empress. She replies that there is symbolism in it. Roxyon has long belonged to the empress, and here the first prince gets it. If Lucas were married, it would no longer be a signal to start a war, but a political hint that it makes to see Lucas as the future emperor. But if the prince is unmarried, then after his brother comes to power, he would have to return all his possessions such as Roxyon. In other words, Lucas doesn't fully own Roxyon. That's why it's hard for the emperor to evaluate these moves, since he intends to put Norton on the throne. That trick at the ball with the falling flowers at her every word, it's an exquisite way of saying that the palace will surely belong to Lenarta Camellia, which means Prince Lucas will be emperor. Sig Ireland asks if Lenarta really wants to do this. He hesitantly explains that she will only attract more stares and that it will not help her. She gently rubs him on the cheek and says that the mere attention of the people is already a great victory. The bird moves to the girl's finger, and she asks why the proud wizard suddenly spoke so thoughtfully. He replies that he may not be able to leave the tower for a long time. The old men have been very busy lately. The only hope for the tower and the people of the empire is Sig Erlan. She shakes him. Sig Erlan quickly breaks free and asks Lenarta to save herself until he returns. He flies away, and Lenarta looks after him, thinking that from now on, her battle is just beginning. Meanwhile, in the tower, a wizard peeks at her through a crystal ball and tells her that Lenarta is all pretending to be strong, though not without reason. That man, her beloved prince, must be a wonderful guy. He ponders when he will get a chance to meet him. Later, Lenrata and Alexa meet for tea at the Duke's house. Lenarta apologizes for not being able to congratulate her on her debut in person. Alexa continues to visit Lady Camellia even after her debut, because she has not yet become a model lady. Alexa continues to visit Lady Camellia even after her debut, because she is not yet a model lady. Alexa invites Lenarta to the house of the Marquis of Lamisha. She gladly agrees. It is convenient for her tomorrow. She asks if it will be just the two of them. Alexandra shakes her head with a smile. More of her friends who couldn't make it to the debut will come, although they really wanted to meet Lenarta. But for some reason, their invitation to the ball did not come. Leonard recalls that Apollonia said that every house received an invitation to this reception, but Leonard did not get hers. She knows that her stepmother Imelda is the culprit of this discrepancy. She was even angrier at Lenarta, especially after that incident before the ball in Roxyon. Their dresses turned out to be the same color. It should have been discussed beforehand. Imelda told Lenarte to go and change immediately. Allegedly, the lower classes always adjust to the more noble ones. Let her. Lenrata will wear her sister's pink dress. Lenarta hates to think that her stepmother wants her to look pathetic at her own debut because she knows that the dress was made to order. She insinuates that she is already taller than Imelda. Then, with an innocent smirk, she explains that her dress is custom-made to match the prince's. So it's the Duchess who needs to change, since the prince is above her in rank. Lenratha sipped her tea and remembered how Imelda had quickly run to change. Then her stepmother had done nothing but spread dirty rumors about Leonard during the whole reception. Laughing quietly at this, she asks Alexa if her friends think the prince is attracted to her, and therefore want to meet her. Alexa assures her that from herself, they have heard good things about Lady Camellia, and they wanted to meet her before the reception. Lenarta expresses concern that she is not yet sufficiently trained in etiquette and may embarrass Alexandra as her teacher. She is still cautious in large crowds. Alexa declares that Lenarta is the daughter of the Duke of Camellia, so no one dares scold her, even if she makes a mistake. Some people might gossip, but they're not her friends. Besides, Lenarta is already good enough. Smiling good-naturedly, Alexa says that Lenarta is more than educated in terms of good manners, even if she has made mistakes. Otherwise, Alexa is considered a talentless teacher. Lenarta is surprised. She thought Alexa would just start reassuring her that no one would judge Lady Camellia, but she has her own principles and standards. Prince Norton's fiancée is indeed a special girl. Lenarta apologizes for her thoughts that Alexa would just praise her too much. There are only two kinds of people who give compliments: hypocrites and fools, but Alexa is not one of them. She's just kind and wise. Alexa is suddenly saddened. She thanks her friend for those words, but she's not sure she deserves them. Usually everyone calls her naively kind. Lenarta confirms that this is so, because Alexa will always distinguish good from bad. But now, listening to her, Lenarta feels more and more sympathy for Alexa. Alexandra is embarrassed almost to the point of tears. She has always been told that she is just stupid. Lenarta is afraid that she has offended her, but she replies that this is the first time she has heard such words spoken to her, and that she is therefore a little ashamed. Lenarta thinks that people expect them to feud like the Norton and Lucas princes. But she doesn't want to fight with Alexa. Even though people say that women are always jealous of each other, she are definitely above those silly stereotypes. Lenarta stands up and quickly approaches Alexa. She says she knows she was sent by the Empress, but it is foolish to waste time fighting. Let the princes work out their own feuds, and they would just have fun together. Alexa took her hand and replied with a bright smile, agreeing with her. Lenarta asks why Alexa didn't come to the ball at Roxion. Alexa embarrassedly replies that people like to compare. She didn't want to embarrass Lenarta. Even though she was absent, the two of them were still being compared. But in front of her, these conversations would all the more not end, and the relationship between the friends would sour. No matter how hard the girls try to get along with each other, they still remain in the shadow of the warring princes. Alexa continues that in her absence, the comparisons were more superficial. But if she had been there, the discussions would have taken a more concrete form. Who is prettier? Who is kinder? Who is nobler? And so on. Everything would be seen in great detail, down to the last eyelash, and then war would break out. For ladies like Leonard and Alexa, social gatherings are a battlefield, and society does not spare the vanquished. Alexa says with a smile that she wanted this day to be Lenarta's day only. Alexa puts her hand on top of her friend's and says that she is very pleased to hear that, and that she understands her feelings. But Alexa thinks bitterly that she can't tell the real reason for her absence. It was Norton who had ordered her not to go that day. He was the one who made that point about comparisons. Alexa had to listen to him. Alexa had heard a lot about Lenarta's success that day. She was surprised, even relieved. But Norton must really hate Lenarta now. He can't stand it when people's attention turns to someone else. Alexa sadly thinks that she knew exactly what she was doing, and that Lenarta knows that Alexa told the Empress all about her. She wishes that Lenarta really was bad. Alexa is afraid that the day will come when she will be asked to put poison in Lenarta's cup, for example. She thinks she can disobey the Empress, but not Norton. She remembers their childhood friendship and thinks she doesn't want Norton to hate her. He's not the nicest person, but he's still her fiancé, and everyone around her keeps telling her he's her destiny. Alexa doesn't know if she has the courage to betray love for friendship. She is dizzy from all this thinking and tells Lenarta that she will go and wash her face. She asked Apollonia to accompany her. She asked Apollonia if everything was all right, because she thought Alexa's expression was very gloomy. When the girls have gone, Lenarta thinks wistfully that she cannot use her gift of clairvoyance as she wishes until she comes of age. She looks up at the sky and notices that it is going to be a rainy day, and her ex-fiancé, Edgar Balin, at the same time desperately drunk and screaming that this girl dared to swap him for some prince. Imelda was beside him, gently stroking Edgar's back and trying to calm him down. She was going to start some rumors to cool the prince's affection for Leonarda. Men lose interest in a woman who's been touched before him. She was going to find some newspaper to spread the rumor, and Balin would just have to wait. But Edgar can't take this humiliation any longer. He stands up and heads for the exit. He grins predatorily and hisses that he's going to let this impudent girl know whose property she is. The maid tries to stop him. He's too drunk to be walking the streets. Balin is known for being the most unenviable groom in the country. He is the second son, so he cannot be the heir. In addition, he is addicted to discharge, gambling, and women. He roughly pushes her aside and gets out of the door, shouting to the surprised coachman to get the carriage ready. Then he orders her to go immediately to the Duchy of Camellia. Alexa, meanwhile, has come out of the restroom, but can't figure out where Apollonia, who was supposed to wait for her here, has gone. She hears a man shouting for Leonarda and sees Balin holding Apollonia by the hair. Alexa runs up to them and firmly orders them to let the poor girl go. Balin stares at her, but sees only another unruly girl. Smirking, he reaches out to Alexa, deciding to start with her. Alexa swatted his hand away with a request and asked loudly who he was to behave like that in the ducal house. But Balin asks if she doesn't know him, and then, shouting that he's about to find out, he grabs the girl's hand and pulls her to him with force. He stares drunkenly at Alexa and says that if you look closely, she's amazingly beautiful, the likes of which he's never seen before. Alexa screams at him to let her go now, blatantly disrespectful, and cringes at the pungent odor of alcohol. The one only grabs her tighter and yells that she doesn't know the real rude ones, namely the prince who seduces other people's brides, and the frivolous wench who succumbs to this seduction. Alexa realizes he's out of his mind when he starts, spittle-flecked, screaming that she dared leave him. She looks around for help. But then Balin, putting his arm around her waist and pulling her even tighter to him, asks where her room is. He wants her to keep him company for the day. Alexa starts screaming fearfully for help and trying to break free, but Balin tells her to shut up or he will tear her mouth open. Alexa starts sobbing out of fright and helplessness. Lenratha is next to her and brings the garden chair down on Balin's head with such force that he falls backwards, letting Alexa out of his arms. A furious Leonarda curses as she is held back by Apollonia. Balin tries to get to his feet and fight, but Leonarda kicks him in the head and tells him to shut up. She then runs over to Alexa and helps her up. She tries to ask who the man is, but Leonarda replies that she will explain later and asks Apollonia to help Alexa. The maid tearfully apologizes for not protecting Lady Lamisha, even though it was her duty. But Leonarda says it is not her fault, but that drunken scoundrel who does not know what he is doing. Balin stands up when he hears her words and shouts that these women have too much self-control since they have decided to make fun of him. Leonarda replies menacingly that it is an obvious fact that he is a drunkard and a scoundrel. She knows that Balin came here in this state because he read the news about Leonarda in the newspaper, because she might actually marry the prince. He must have listened to his mother and come here to make a fuss, because Imelda will have to take the blame for him. Balin replies that he is her fiancé and has the right to come here whenever he wants. But Leonarda says she knows that her father promised Balin something in return for marrying her, though he'll probably drink and lose all the money anyway. He didn't come here for love, he came here for money. Balin mumbles something about society and marriage to Camellia. Leonarda replies that this is ridiculous. He will never fit into secular society until he gets rid of his nasty habits. She angrily tells him not to even dream of using her for money or status. Balin has no answer to this, and Leonarda decides that she has hit the mark. Turning her back to him, she orders him to get out if he gets it. And don't forget to tell your mommy what happened here. But then his fists clench in rage and Alexa notices it. She yells loudly to Leonarda, but doesn't make it in time. Balin hits Leonarda, and she falls painfully to the ground. Balin raises his fist for another blow, and Leonarda covers his head with his hand in preparation. But suddenly his fist is stopped by the prince's hand. Lucas calmly says that he came here looking for his lady, but found some garbage. Leonarda tries in amazement to ask how he ended up here, since he wasn't going to come today. Balin yells for Lucas to take his hands off, lashes out and tries to pounce on the prince. He is stopped by a sword blade pressed against his throat. It is Cyrus, and he says that whoever willfully harms a member of the imperial family is sentenced to death. Balin falls down, and Cyrus draws his sword with the words that he can execute him on the spot. Alexandra is smitten with her brother, and Lucas laughingly stops him and says that they need to find out who it is first. But Cyrus replies that it doesn't matter, adding threateningly that the man is going to die today. Still with the same smile, Lucas replies that it matters to him, and Leonarda bashfully says that it's Edgar Balin, which is the kind of fiancé she had planned. Lucas knows the surname. Leonarda explains that although he is from a noble family, the title has been inherited for 3 generations, and Edgar is the second son. With a unique smile, Lucas approaches Balin, who is lying on the ground, and asks him to clarify the situation. Balin notices the sword of the imperial family on his belt. Matching Kira's words and that sword, Balin realizes that this guy is Prince Lucas. He hurriedly stands up and tries to come up with an excuse. Lucas replies that he must have a good reason for his actions. Especially for Balin, Lucas affectionately draws Lennart to him, calling her his favorite, and sells his hand to Alexa, calling her Lady Lamisha. Balin immediately realizes what he has done and falls on his knees in front of Alexei. He screams that he didn't recognize her and begs forgiveness for it, that he was drunk and rude. Leonarda coldly recalls the prince's words that it takes a good reason. She looms over him and menacingly asks if he really thinks alcohol and a stupid mistake can serve as a good explanation for what he did. Balin tries to say something, but Keir interrupts, warning him in advance that no excuses will help for threatening his sister. Don't let Balin think the law is on his side. Leonarda asks how Keir and Lucas got here in the first place. Lucas answers with a smile that Keir wanted to come and get his sister, and that he had come along for the ride. He was too lazy to send an official letter to the Duke for permission to visit. He just decided to visit his beloved at the same time. It was good for him to come and see how dare anyone raise a hand against the one he himself cherished as the apple of his eye. Balin, still on his knees, tries to explain that Lenarta will soon be his wife. Entona had disrespected him, and he, as her fiancé, was just trying to reason with her. Alexandra approaches him and asks him what kind of upbringing he thinks he subjected his fiancée to in her own home, recalling his threats to Alexa. Shamefully looking away, Balin apologizes. He just mistook Lady Lamisha for a servant. Alexa freaks out. You don't even throw threats like that at maids. It's not a sign of good manners to spread your hands around. More calmly, she says, addressing Balin as gentleman, that she has been appointed by the Empress herself to educate Lady Camellia, and he has no right to bring her up himself, nor even to discuss it with Alexa. He tries to say something about it being between a man and a woman, but she is unwilling to listen to his excuses. When he heard that the incident would be officially reported to Her Majesty, Balin turned pale. Imelda appears, and Balin throws herself on her chest with relief and tears. She shouts at Lenarta, trying to find out what is going on here. Alexa quietly tells Lenarta that nothing will happen to her, and asks her to forgive her in advance, but she will accuse her fiancé of attempted rape. Imelda and Balin are stunned by her words. Balin begins to roar that he wouldn't have done anything if he'd known it was Lady Lamisha. Keir snorts. Balin's drenched eyes wouldn't have been able to tell one from the other. Alexa looks at Balin silently and with undisguised disdain. Imelda hesitantly asks him to leave him alone. She will deal with him herself, even though she doesn't know what happened. Lucas answers her, stepping forward to keep her quiet since she knows nothing. He says that for the sake of the Camellia family's reputation, he has tried to be a lowly suitor for Lenarta's hand. Even when it was hinted that she already had a fiancé, Lucas remained silent, swallowing his resentment. He asked Imelda if it was the Duke's honor to prefer a prince to a man who had tried to dishonor a noblewoman of the House of Lemetius. Lucas puts his hand on Lenarta's shoulder and asks why on earth she has to endure so-called parenting from someone like that. Imelda panics and says that there has been a misunderstanding, but Lucas does not listen to her and looks into Lenarta's eyes. He fervently asks her to tell her everything, because he thought that the worst thing the poor girl had to put up with was the fight between her fiancé. But if she faces this kind of disrespect from Balin, the prince has no intention of staying away. Lenarta rolls his eyes and snorts to himself, his acting getting better and better each time. She decides to play along and throws herself on his chest with crocodile tears. Imelda erupts and Alexa immediately steps forward, and says that as Leonarda's mentor under the Empress's orders, she has a duty to protect her. She tells Imelda that her role as mentor is clear. Leonarda is important because the prince himself has asked her to marry him. It doesn't matter that she is already betrothed to someone else, she must be respected by the whole empire. Alexandra, as Prince Norton's fiancée, knows this firsthand, but it seems the duchy is not a safe place for this young lady. Alexa squints at Leonarda and thinks that she always looks as if she is used to such attitude at home. Usually ladies don't know swear words like the ones she used on Balin and don't react to aggression in such a way. She had encountered such cases before. Commoner children learn to live in the chaos of evil, constantly facing danger. Lenrada, on the other hand, risked herself to save Alexa. She can't turn a blind eye. Alexa must save Lenrada from this place. She tells Imelda that she agrees with Lucas that Lady Camellia needs protection. After all, she is still a minor and her parents obviously can't protect her. Imelda is confused and says that this all happened without her knowledge. Lucas reminds her that they are in a duchy, and Balin is Imelda's nephew, whom she herself has chosen to marry Lenart. Balin has tried to harm the prince, and for that alone he should be executed. Imelda is furious and mentally curses Balin, deciding that he is no longer good for anything and that he should go to hell. But she will not let Lenarta go so easily. Only her son, the next possessor of the White Eye, can become Duke Camelia's heir. The Duke himself appears on the lawn. He asks Prince Lucas to stop the accusations and declares that his daughter Lenarta will not leave the duchy.